The billionaire everyone feared sat alone in the dark, trapped in a body that wouldn't obey, until a janitor who'd buried his wife walked in and said the one thing no one dared: "I can help you walk again." But this wasn't about money. This wasn't about miracles. This was about two people who understood that some prisons don't have bars and some healers don't wear white coats. What happened next would shatter everything Evelyn Shaw built to protect herself from hope. Before we begin, if this story moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey travels. Now, let's step into Evelyn's world. The crystal chandelier in La Lumiere's VIP room cast fractured rainbows across the white tablecloth, each shard of light dancing like promises Evelyn Shaw no longer believed in. She sat motionless in her custom wheelchair, midnight blue carbon fiber worth more than most people's cars, watching the candle flames flicker in their hurricane glasses. Tuesday nights, she reserved this room. Not for business, not for pleasure, just for the illusion of normalcy, the pretense that she was still a woman who dined out rather than a spectacle people whispered about. "Ms. Shaw, your usual?" The sommelier approached with practiced deference, eyes carefully fixed on her face, never dropping to the wheels, never lingering on the cashmere blanket draped across legs that hadn't moved in 18 months. The Châteauneuf du Pape, 2015. Her voice carried the crisp authority of someone who'd built a tech empire before 40, who'd crushed competitors with algorithms and ambition, who'd never needed anyone's pity, and sure as hell wouldn't start now. The sommelier retreated. Evelyn's fingers, still perfect, still powerful, traced the rim of her water glass. Around her, the restaurant hummed with life. Laughter from the main dining room. The clink of silverware against porcelain. The rustle of ambition and desire, and all the messy, beautiful motion of people whose bodies did what they commanded. She'd stopped going to physical therapy 3 months ago, stopped pretending that electrodes and encouragement would somehow shock her spine back to life. The doctors had explained it carefully, repeatedly, with that infuriating mixture of sympathy and certainty. The fall had severed something crucial. No surgical fix, no experimental treatment. Just acceptance, adjustment, and the architectural challenge of redesigning a life from a seated position. Evelyn had nodded through those conversations like she nodded through board meetings, absorbing information, revealing nothing. Then she'd liquidated her rehabilitation center membership, fired her home therapist, and committed fully to the wheelchair. If she was going to be broken, she'd be broken magnificently. No half measures, no desperate hope making a fool of her. The wine arrived. She let it breathe, watching shadows shift across the private room's silk wallpaper. This was her routine now. Tuesday nights at La Lumiere, where the staff knew not to hover, where the VIP room's positioning meant she could enter and exit without navigating the main floor's sympathetic stairs, where she could pretend for 90 minutes that her life was still her own. "Excuse me, Ms. Shaw?" The voice came from the doorway, quiet, almost apologetic. Evelyn's head snapped up, irritation flashing hot. The staff knew better than to interrupt. She'd paid generously for privacy, and La Lumiere's discretion was half the reason she kept coming. But the man standing in the doorway wasn't staff. He wore the standard-issue navy blue uniform of the restaurant's cleaning crew, a name tag reading Marcus pinned slightly crooked over his heart. Mid-30s, maybe. Tall, with the kind of lean build that came from work rather than gyms. Dark skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes that held something Evelyn couldn't immediately categorize. Not pity, not curiosity. Something steadier, more dangerous. "How did you get past?" she began, her voice sharpening into the blade she'd used to cut through executive boardrooms. "The staff thinks I'm checking the climate control." Marcus didn't move from the doorway, didn't presume entry. "I have maybe 2 minutes before someone realizes I'm not where I should be." "Then you should leave." Evelyn's hand moved to the discreet alert button built into her wheelchair's armrest. One press would summon security, and this janitor, however bold, would be escorted out before her wine finished breathing. "I want to help you walk again." The words landed like a slap. Evelyn's finger froze millimeters from the button. For a moment, the only sound was the candle flames consuming wax, a faint hiss of destruction masquerading as ambiance. Then she laughed. It erupted from somewhere deep, bitter, and sharp, the kind of laughter that drew blood. Jesus Christ, did someone put you up to this? Is this some kind of... Your left foot moved. Evelyn's laughter died. What? When you laughed just now. Marcus's voice remained level, factual. Your left foot. The toes contracted, just slightly. But they moved. They did not. The words came out flat, final. The fall damaged my T12 vertebra. The signal doesn't reach my legs. That's not opinion. That's neurology. I'm not talking about the fall. Marcus took one careful step into the room, his hands visible, empty, non-threatening. I'm talking about right now, when your emotions spiked, anger, surprise, whatever you felt, your left toes curled. I saw it. You saw nothing. But Evelyn's eyes dropped involuntarily to her feet, hidden beneath the cashmere blanket, as useless to her as distant continents. And even if you did, it means nothing. Phantom sensations, muscle memory, the body lying to itself. Or the body telling the truth your doctors missed. The presumption of it, this janitor, this stranger, contradicting neurologists who'd studied for decades, should have been laughable, should have been insulting, should have sent Evelyn's finger stabbing down on that security button. Instead, she found herself studying him, really looking. The way he stood suggested military training, balanced, alert, comfortable with stillness. His uniform was clean but worn, the kind of worn that came from years of use, not fashion. No wedding ring, hands that looked capable. And those eyes, steady on hers, offering something she couldn't name. You don't know anything about me, Evelyn said quietly. I know you stopped going to therapy. Marcus's voice remained gentle, but underneath lay something harder. I know you come here every Tuesday. Same room, same wine, same 2 hours of pretending this is your choice instead of your prison. I know you tip the staff extremely well to maintain the fiction that you're generous instead of desperate for their discretion. Heat flooded Evelyn's face. You've been watching me? I clean this restaurant 5 nights a week. I see things. He paused, then added, my wife had psychological paralysis after a car accident. Different cause, same cage. The doctors said she'd never walk. She did. Something in Evelyn's chest cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but enough to let something dangerous seep through. Where's she now? Your miracle recovery wife? She died 2 years ago. Cancer. But she walked to her last treatment under her own power. Marcus's expression didn't change, but Evelyn heard the weight behind the words. I helped her fight her way back because I loved her too much to let her disappear into safety. The candles guttered. Evelyn's throat felt tight. This isn't... I don't need... You're terrified. Marcus said it simply, like commenting on the weather. Not of being paralyzed, of trying and failing, of hoping and being wrong. So you've built this elegant cage and called it acceptance. Get out. The words should have been sharp, commanding. Instead, they came out hoarse. Look at your left foot. I said look at it, Ms. Shaw. Right now, don't think, just look. Against every instinct, against every defense she'd constructed, Evelyn looked down. Her hands moved to the cashmere blanket. She hesitated. This was madness. This was some janitor's delusion. But her fingers were already pulling the fabric aside. Her legs lay motionless beneath tailored slacks. Still, dead, exactly as they'd been for 18 months. Then she felt it. A ghost. A whisper. A sensation so faint she might have imagined it, except her left big toe twitched. Evelyn's world tilted. The VIP room, the candles, the expensive wine. Everything blurred except that one tiny motion. It could have been a spasm, a random firing, meaningless. But it wasn't. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Yes. Marcus's voice cut through her spiraling. And that no, you're saying? That's fear talking, the same fear that's kept you coming to this room instead of fighting for your life. Evelyn's hands gripped her wheelchair's armrests, knuckles white. Hope was rising in her chest like water in a sinking ship, cold and terrifying and unstoppable. Hope was the enemy. Hope was what broke you when reality reasserted itself. You don't understand, her voice cracked. I can't. I won't. You won't try because trying means admitting you gave up. Marcus took another step closer, then stopped, respecting the distance. You won't try because if you fail, you can't pretend anymore that this wheelchair is your choice. It's not that simple. It never is. Marcus pulled something from his pocket. A business card. Simple. Probably printed at a copy shop. He placed it on the table beside her wine glass. When you're ready to stop hiding in elegance, call me. First session is just talking. No touching. No pressure. You set every boundary. You say stop, we stop. You say never, I disappear. Why? Evelyn's voice was barely audible. Why do you care what happens to some billionaire you don't know? Marcus met her eyes, and for the first time she saw past the steadiness to the grief beneath. Because my daughter asks me every night why I couldn't save her mother. And I tell her some battles aren't about saving, they're about showing up. You remind me of someone who stopped showing up for herself. He turned toward the door. Wait. The word escaped before Evelyn could stop it. Marcus paused but didn't turn around. What's your daughter's name? Lily. She's 7. Does she know you do this? Corner strangers with impossible promises? Now Marcus did turn, and something that might have been a smile touched his face. She knows I keep promises I make, even the impossible ones. Then he was gone, leaving Evelyn alone with guttering candles, cooling wine, and a toe that had moved when her carefully constructed certainty cracked. Marcus made it to the service corridor before his hands started shaking. The confidence he'd projected in that VIP room, the calm, the certainty, the quiet authority, evaporated the moment he was alone. He leaned against the industrial tile wall, breathing carefully, trying to slow his racing heart. What the hell had he just done? Evelyn Shaw wasn't just any patient. She was a tech billionaire, a woman who could crush him with a phone call, who probably had lawyers on retainer for exactly this kind of situation. Harassment, unwanted medical advice, invasion of privacy. He just committed about 6 fireable offenses, possibly more. And yet, that toe had moved. He'd seen it. More than that, he'd recognized it. The same pattern Sarah had shown in their kitchen 2 months into her own nightmare, when grief and rage had unlocked something the doctors swore was impossible. Marcus pushed off the wall, grabbed his cleaning cart from where he'd stashed it, and forced his body back into the rhythm of work. Spray, wipe, move, spray, wipe, move. The meditation of labor, the prayer of showing up. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, the neighbor who watched Lily on late shift nights. She's asleep. Don't rush home. We made cookies. Marcus smiled despite the adrenaline still flooding his system. Lily, his reason for everything, his 7-year-old philosopher with Sarah's eyes and a stubborn streak that could outlast mountains. He finished his route on autopilot, mind spinning through what came next. Evelyn Shaw probably wouldn't call. People like her didn't trust people like him. She'd write off the toe movement as a spasm, convince herself he was a con artist, and go back to her Tuesday night rituals. But if she did call, Marcus unlocked his locker in the staff changing room, trading his uniform for jeans and a flannel jacket. In the inside pocket, wrapped in plastic to protect it from spills and wear, was Sarah's journal. He didn't need to open it to remember the words she'd written on day 63. Marcus says I moved my ankle today. I didn't feel it, but I believe him because he's never lied about the hard things. Maybe that's what love is. Witnessing the small impossibilities your body achieves when your mind isn't watching. He'd helped Sarah walk again, yes, but the cost had been brutal. Months of tears, setbacks that broke them both, progress measured in millimeters. And in the end, cancer had taken her anyway, rendering all that hard-won mobility meaningless except as memory. Or maybe not meaningless. Marcus pulled out his phone, stared at the blank screen. If Evelyn called, what would he actually do? He wasn't a physical therapist, wasn't a doctor, just a widower with a janitor's wage and a daughter who needed stability, not her father taking risks that could cost him everything. But he'd seen Evelyn's face when that toe moved, the terror of hope, the desperate need to unsee it, to retreat back into the certainty of brokenness. He knew that face, had watched it in his bathroom mirror for months after Sarah's diagnosis, when hope felt like betrayal of the inevitable. His phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he answered, Gukit. Lily Reed had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn silence. She sat at Mrs. Chen's kitchen table, supposedly asleep, actually wide awake and listening to the adults talk in the living room. Marcus is taking risks again, Mrs. Chen said, her voice carrying that worried tone Lily knew meant grown-up problems. I saw his face when he picked up Lily last week, that look he gets when he's planning something. Mr. Chen's response was quieter, harder to hear. Man's gotta live his life, can't wrap himself in bubble wrap just because... It's not about bubble wrap, it's about that child. Mrs. Chen's teacup clinked against its saucer. She's already lost her mother. If Marcus goes and does something foolish... Lily stopped listening. She'd heard versions of this conversation before, always when people thought she couldn't hear. Always about Dad taking risks, about how he worked too hard, about how he needed to move on, to date, to stop carrying Sarah's ghost like a backpack. But they didn't understand. Dad wasn't carrying a ghost. He was carrying a promise. Lily slipped off the chair, padding silently to the guest room where Mrs. Chen let her keep some clothes and books. Under the bed, in a shoebox she'd decorated with stickers, was her own collection of important things. A photo of Mom laughing, a pressed flower from the hospital garden, and a folded piece of paper with Mom's handwriting. Dear Lily Flower, by the time you read this, I'll be somewhere else. But before I go, I need you to know something important. Your dad is the strongest man I ever met, not because he's tough, but because he knows how to help people find their own strength. If he ever seems sad or quiet, it's not because he's broken. It's because he's carrying other people's hope until they're ready to carry it themselves. Be patient with him, be proud of him, and never, ever let him stop being who he is. Love always, Mom. Lily refolded the letter carefully. She was 7, not stupid. She knew what the grown-ups were worried about. Dad had a pattern. He'd see someone struggling, someone the world had given up on, and he'd decide they deserved better. He'd helped Mrs. Garcia's son get into community college. He'd spent 6 months teaching Mr. Williams to read after his stroke. He collected broken people and helped them remember they weren't broken. Mom had been his biggest project, his longest fight. And when she died anyway, something in Dad had cracked. Not broken. Lily was very clear on the difference, but cracked enough that light could get in. Or out. She wasn't sure which. Lily? Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. I thought you were asleep, little bird. Couldn't sleep. Lily tucked the letter away. Is Dad okay? Mrs. Chen's face softened. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand gentle on Lily's hair. Your father is always okay, sweetheart. He cares very much about helping people. Sometimes too much. Mom said that's his superpower. Your mother was right, Mrs. Chen smiled sadly. But even superheroes need to rest sometimes. Lily nodded, but she didn't believe it. Rest was for people who'd finished their work. Dad's work, the real work, the kind Mom had written about, never stopped. There was always someone else who needed help finding their strength. She just hoped this time whoever Dad was helping would be strong enough not to break him. Evelyn sat in the VIP room long after Marcus left, the business card burning a hole in her perception. The wine had gone to room temperature. The candles had burned down to stubs. Outside the silk-covered windows, Manhattan's lights blazed like a circuit board, all that energy going nowhere useful. Her phone sat on the table beside the card. She could call security now, report the incident, have Marcus fired. It would be easy. Justified, even. He'd violated protocol, invaded her privacy, made medical claims without credentials. Instead, she picked up the card. Plain white stock, probably $20 for $500 at a print shop. No logo, just a name, Marcus Reed, and a phone number. On the back, in careful handwriting, the body remembers what the mind forgets. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She looked down at her feet again. The left one sat motionless now, as still as marble. Had she imagined the movement? Had Marcus planted the suggestion so skillfully that her desperate mind conjured phantom motion? Or, no. She couldn't go down that road. Hope was quicksand. Hope was the enemy of the careful, controlled life she'd built from the rubble of her marriage and her dignity. Evelyn reached for her phone, pulled up her assistant's number. One text, and Marcus Reed would be history. His employee file flagged, his background checked, his presumption punished. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Does she know you do this? Corner strangers with impossible promises? She knows I keep promises I make, even the impossible ones. Evelyn set the phone down, picked up the business card again. The cardstock was slightly rough, the kind of texture that came from cheaper paper, but the handwriting on the back was careful, intentional. The writing of someone who meant what they said. She thought about her last physical therapy session 3 months ago. The therapist, young, energetic, relentlessly positive, had guided her through the same exercises she'd done 100 times before. Leg lifts assisted by straps, electrical stimulation that made her muscles twitch like a science experiment, balance work on a mat while the therapist's hands held her upright. You're doing great, Ms. Shaw. I really think we're making progress. But they weren't. Evelyn had known it with the certainty of someone who'd spent a career reading data. The numbers didn't lie. Her body didn't respond. The therapy was expensive theater, a performance where everyone pretended improvement was possible if she just tried hard enough, so she'd stop trying. Except now, in this cooling VIP room with Marcus Reed's business card in her hand, Evelyn realized the truth. She hadn't stopped trying. She'd stopped showing up. There was a difference. Trying meant risk. Showing up just meant presence, witness, the willingness to sit with possibility even when probability said no. Her phone buzzed, a text from her driver. Ready when you are, Ms. Shaw. Evelyn looked at the business card one more time. Then, moving with the decisive speed that had built her empire, she pulled out her phone and took a photo of it, just for reference, just in case. Not because she was actually going to call, but because her left toe had moved, and Marcus Reed had seen it, and maybe, just maybe, the most dangerous thing she could do right now was pretend it hadn't happened. She texted her driver, 5 minutes. Then she drained her room temperature wine in one long swallow, tasting nothing, and wheeled herself toward the door. Toward her car. Toward her penthouse with its accessible design and its careful emptiness. Toward Tuesday night, becoming Wednesday morning, when she'd wake up and decide whether hope was worth the risk of breaking again. Marcus made it home just after midnight. The apartment was quiet. Mrs. Chen had let herself out, leaving a note about the cookies and a reminder that Lily had swim class Thursday. He checked on his daughter first, a ritual he'd never skip, finding her curled around her stuffed elephant, breathing slow and steady in sleep. Safe. Whole. His. He retreated to the kitchen, poured himself water he didn't drink, and stared at Sarah's journal on the counter. He'd pulled it out after that phone call, the one that turned out to be a telemarketer, not Evelyn Shaw, because he needed to remember why he'd done what he did tonight. The journal fell open to a page near the middle, Sarah's handwriting shakier here, the progression of her illness visible in the way her letters lost their confidence. Day 127. Marcus won't let me quit. I hate him for it sometimes. I hate that he believes in something my body keeps proving wrong. But then he shows me the video from week 1, me crying because I couldn't feel my legs, and the video from yesterday, me standing for 8 seconds, and I hate him less. Maybe belief is just stubbornness with better lighting. Marcus smiled despite the ache in his chest. Sarah had been so angry during recovery, angry at him, at her body, at the universe that had put her in that position. But she'd shown up anyway, day after brutal day, because he'd refused to let her disappear into the safety of surrender. He'd offered Evelyn Shaw the same refusal tonight. Now he just had to hope she was angry enough to accept it. His phone sat on the counter, dark and quiet. No calls, no texts. Just the normal silence of a Tuesday night stretching toward Wednesday. Marcus picked up Sarah's journal, carried it to his bedroom, and tucked it into the nightstand drawer where he kept his most important things. Lily's hospital bracelet from birth, his marriage certificate, the last photo of Sarah smiling, evidence that impossible things happened when you showed up for them. He set his alarm for 5:30 a.m., early shift tomorrow, and lay in the dark, thinking about a billionaire in a wheelchair and a toe that had moved when hope cracked through her carefully constructed defenses. If she called, he'd be ready. And if she didn't, well, he'd shown up, made the offer, planted the seed. Sometimes that's all you could do, bear witness to possibility and trust the person to choose courage when they were ready. But Marcus hoped she'd call. For Lily, who asked why he couldn't save her mother, For Sarah, who'd walked to her last treatment because she'd refused to let cancer steal her dignity. And for Evelyn Shaw, who sat alone in expensive restaurants pretending her cage was a choice. The impossible was only impossible until someone proved otherwise. Marcus closed his eyes and waited for morning. Wednesday came with rain. Evelyn woke in her penthouse to the sound of water streaking glass, the city beyond rendered in soft grays and silvers. She lay in her adjustable bed, medical grade, obscenely expensive, perfectly designed to support a body that couldn't support itself, and stared at the ceiling. Her morning routine was choreographed precision: transfer from bed to wheelchair, wheel to the accessible bathroom, manage the intimate indignities that paralysis demanded, shower in the roll-in stall, dress in clothes cut to accommodate her seated position, apply makeup with the same executive precision she'd once brought to corporate warfare. By 7 a.m., she was in her home office, reviewing quarterly reports that her executive team had prepared. By 8, she was on a video call with Tokyo, discussing expansion strategies and market penetration. By 9, she'd forgotten about Marcus Reed and his impossible promise. Except she hadn't. The business card sat in her desk drawer, exactly where she'd put it at 2 a.m. when sleep finally seemed possible. She'd told herself she was filing it away, not saving it. Big difference. One was organization. The other was hope. Ms. Shaw? Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Your 10 o'clock is here. Send them in. The meeting was with her legal team, reviewing patents and protections. Evelyn navigated it with the same sharp focus that had made her fortune, asking questions that exposed weaknesses, demanding revisions that would bulletproof her intellectual property. This was her element. This was where she still had power. The wheelchair didn't matter in these rooms. The paralysis was irrelevant. She was still Evelyn Shaw, still dangerous, still winning. But when the lawyers left and the office fell quiet again, she opened her desk drawer and looked at the card. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Her left foot, hidden under her desk, felt like a distant country. She couldn't see it, couldn't command it. It might as well not exist. Except it had moved. Maybe. Possibly. If she believed a janitor over neurologists. Evelyn picked up the card, turned it over in her hands. What was the risk? A phone call, a conversation. She could hang up at any point. She could say no. She could maintain complete control over the situation. Control. That was the issue, wasn't it? The one thing her fall had stolen, the one thing she'd been desperately trying to reclaim ever since. Before she could talk herself out of it, Evelyn pulled out her phone and dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, Marcus Reed. His voice was different on the phone, tired maybe, or cautious. Evelyn realized with a start that she'd expected confidence, the same quiet certainty he'd shown in the restaurant. Instead, he sounded like a man who'd been waiting for a call he wasn't sure would come. This is Evelyn Shaw. A pause, then, I hoped you'd call. I haven't decided anything yet. The words came out sharper than she intended. I'm calling to establish ground rules? If I agree to this, and that's if, there are conditions. I'm listening. Evelyn took a breath, steadying herself. First, no pity. I don't need sympathy, and I don't want encouragement that sounds like you're coaching a child. I'm a grown woman who's been through more condescension than you can imagine. Understood. Second, no touching without explicit consent, every time. You don't move my legs, you don't adjust my body, you don't do anything physical without asking first and receiving clear permission. Absolutely. Third, stop means stop. The moment I say we're done, we're done. No pushing, no one more try, no manipulation disguised as motivation. Agreed. The ease of his acceptance unbalanced her. Evelyn had expected negotiation, resistance, the kind of pushback that proved he was just another person trying to fix her for his own satisfaction. Instead, Marcus was simply accepting her terms. Why? She asked, the question escaping before she could filter it. Why are you making this so easy? Because you're right. Marcus's voice held something that might have been a smile. Those rules aren't restrictions, they're respect. I'm not here to force healing on you, Ms. Shaw. I'm here to help you find it yourself if you decide it's worth finding. Evelyn's throat felt tight. I'm not convinced this is real. The toe movement. It could have been a spasm, a fluke. Could have been, Marcus agreed. Or it could have been your body telling you something your doctors missed. Only one way to find out. And if we try and nothing happens, if I'm just wasting your time, then we stop. No harm done. A pause. But Ms. Shaw, I don't think you called me to waste time. I think you called because part of you, maybe a small part, maybe a part you don't trust yet, wants to know if your body has more to say. Rain streaked the windows of Evelyn's office. Below, Manhattan moved and breathed and lived, all those bodies obeying their owner's commands without question. She'd taken that for granted once. Movement, freedom. The simple assumption that when she told her legs to walk, they would. Where would we do this? She heard herself ask. My apartment. It's accessible, ground floor, wide doorways, nothing fancy, but it's private. Or if you prefer, your place, wherever you feel safest. Your apartment, Evelyn decided. Neutral territory, easier to leave if she needed to. When? I work evenings this week. Could do mornings, 10 to noon, or weekends if that's better. Friday, 10 a.m. Text me your address. She was already pulling up her calendar, blocking the time. And Marcus? If this goes badly, if you're wrong about any of this, I will... I know. His voice was gentle. You'll destroy me. I get it. But Ms. Shaw, I'm not wrong. I can't promise you'll walk again. But I can promise your body is telling you something. Whether you listen is up to you. Evelyn ended the call before she could second-guess herself, before fear could masquerade as common sense and talk her out of this insanity. She sat in her office with rain painting patterns on glass and a business card that had just become an appointment. Friday, 10 a.m. 2 days to prepare. Or 2 days to panic. Evelyn wasn't sure which she'd choose. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn clarity that made New York feel like a promise. Evelyn sat in the back of her town car, watching brownstones slide past the tinted windows, and tried to remember the last time her hands had shaken like this. Maybe the board meeting where she'd announced her divorce. Maybe the hospital after the fall. Maybe never. Her driver, Robert, 62, former Marine, hired specifically because he didn't do small talk, glanced in the rearview mirror. Address is coming up on the left, Ms. Shaw. Ground floor apartment, accessible entrance just like you requested, I confirm. Thank you, Robert. Her voice came out steady, which felt like a small victory. Wait for me. This shouldn't take more than 2 hours. Take your time, Robert pulled smoothly to the curb. I'll be right here. The building was exactly what Evelyn had expected. Older construction, well-maintained but modest, the kind of place where working people built lives without drama or pretension. A small ramp led to a side entrance, installed recently enough that the concrete still looked fresh. Someone had added a handrail too, sturdy and practical. Marcus opened the door before she could knock. He looked different in civilian clothes, jeans, a faded Howard University sweatshirt, bare feet that suggested he was comfortable in his own space. His expression was calm, open, without the cautious professionalism he'd worn at the restaurant. This was Marcus on his home territory, and something about his ease made Evelyn's anxiety spike higher. Ms. Shaw, come in. He stepped back, giving her room to navigate the threshold. The apartment was small but thoughtfully arranged. Hardwood floors, recently refinished. Furniture pushed back to create clear pathways. A child's artwork taped to the refrigerator. Crayon flowers and stick figures that radiated the kind of joy only 7-year-olds could capture. The space smelled like coffee and something sweeter, maybe cinnamon rolls. Lily's at school, Marcus said, following Evelyn's gaze to the artwork. I told her I had an important meeting. She wanted to stay and observe, but I explained that some things require privacy. She knows what you're doing? Evelyn wheeled further into the living room, taking in the details. A photo on the bookshelf caught her eye. Marcus with a woman who had to be Sarah, both of them laughing at something beyond the frame. The photo radiated the kind of happiness that hurt to look at. She knows I help people sometimes. Marcus moved to the kitchen, poured coffee without asking if Evelyn wanted any. She doesn't know specifics, just that her dad believes in showing up for people when they need it. Noble. The word came out more bitter than Evelyn intended. She accepted the coffee he offered, black in a simple mug that said "World's Okayest Dad," and tried to settle the tremor in her hands. Is that what this is? Your good deed for the month? Marcus sat on the couch across from her, his posture relaxed but attentive. This is me refusing to let someone give up on themselves when their body is trying to tell them something different. My body told me plenty when I hit the pavement from a third-story balcony. Evelyn sipped the coffee. It was good, better than she'd expected. It said I made a mistake. It said some things can't be fixed. What did you feel? Marcus's voice was gentle but insistent. Right before you jumped. What were you trying to escape? The question landed like a fist. Evelyn's hands tightened on the mug. Who said I jumped? You did. Just now. Marcus leaned forward slightly. You said you hit the pavement from a third-story balcony. Not that you fell. Not that you slipped. You chose your words carefully, Ms. Shaw. You always do. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of traffic and someone's television bleeding through the walls. Evelyn wanted to stand up, except she couldn't. Wanted to storm out, wanted to call Robert and leave this invasive stranger behind. Instead, she told the truth. My husband was hosting a party. Investors, board members, the usual performance. I was supposed to smile and be charming and prove that Richard fucking Shaw had excellent taste in decorative wives. Her voice was flat, clinical, like she was describing someone else's life. He introduced me to a new venture capitalist, young guy, hungry, stupid. My husband actually said, in front of a room full of people, "This is Evelyn. She's lovely, but not much for business, strictly ornamental." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. I excused myself to the balcony, told myself I needed air, but really, I needed to remember what it felt like to exist in my own body, not as Richard's accessory. Evelyn set the coffee down, her hands no longer shaking but locked rigid instead. The railing was low, the street was far, and for just a second I thought about how simple it would be to step into nothing. But you didn't step, Marcus said quietly. You jumped. I jumped because stepping felt too passive, too much like falling. Evelyn met his eyes, daring him to look away. I jumped because I wanted to choose something, even if that something was destruction. Does that shock you? Disappoint you? Make you regret inviting me here? No. Marcus's answer was immediate. It makes me think your paralysis isn't weakness, it's protection. The words hit Evelyn like cold water. What? Your body shut down because it was trying to keep you safe. Marcus spoke carefully, like he was handling something fragile. You tried to escape a life where you had no control, no voice, no power. And when that escape failed, your body found another way. It locked you in place so you couldn't try again. That's not, Evelyn started, then stopped. Because it was. It absolutely was. The doctors had never found structural damage severe enough to explain complete paralysis. They'd used words like complex, unusual, psychosomatic overlay. She'd heard those words as failure, as her body betraying her twice, once in the fall, again in the aftermath. But what if Marcus was right? What if her paralysis wasn't betrayal but mercy? I don't know how to fix that, she whispered. You don't fix it. Marcus stood, moved to a cabinet, and pulled out a yoga mat. You negotiate with it. You show your body that movement is safe again, that you're not trying to escape anymore. You're trying to exist. And how exactly do we do that? Evelyn watched him spread the mat on the floor, her heart rate climbing. We start with breathing. Breathing? Evelyn's laugh was sharp. I've been breathing for 42 years, Marcus. I'm fairly proficient. Have you? He settled onto the mat, cross-legged, and gestured to the space beside him. Or have you been surviving? There's a difference. Evelyn wanted to argue, to prove this was ridiculous, to maintain the intellectual superiority that had always been her shield. Instead, she found herself transferring from her wheelchair to the mat, Marcus's hands ready to assist, but waiting for permission she didn't give. She managed it herself, awkward, ungraceful, but independent. Good, Marcus said. Now close your eyes. I'd rather not. This is you saying stop already? His tone held a challenge. We haven't even started. Evelyn closed her eyes. Breathe in for 4 counts, Marcus instructed. Hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Don't think about your legs. Don't think about walking. Just focus on the rhythm. It was harder than it should have been. Evelyn's mind kept skipping ahead, cataloging fears and failures, rehearsing worst-case scenarios. But Marcus's voice stayed steady, counting her through each cycle, and gradually the noise in her head quieted to something manageable. Now, Marcus said, after what might have been 5 minutes or 50, I want you to imagine sensation in your left foot. Don't try to move it. Just imagine what it would feel like if you could. That's humor me. Evelyn tried. She pictured her left foot, visualized the bones and muscles and nerves that should connect it to her brain. Imagined warmth there, pressure, the ghost of sensation. Nothing happened. It's not working, she said. You're trying too hard. Marcus's voice held a smile. Stop performing, stop proving. Just be present with the possibility. I don't know how to do that. I know. That's why we're practicing. They sat in silence, breathing in sync, while autumn light crept across the hardwood floor and somewhere outside a dog barked at passing strangers. Evelyn felt ridiculous. A billionaire sitting on a janitor's floor, eyes closed, trying to feel something that wasn't there. Then, like a whisper from a distant room, she felt it. Warmth, the faintest suggestion of sensation in her left foot, so subtle she might have imagined it. There, she breathed. Did you see? Don't look yet. Marcus's voice was urgent. Stay with the feeling. Don't analyze it. Just acknowledge it. The warmth grew, spreading from her toes up through her ankle. Not movement, not control, just presence. Her body remembering it existed below the waist, that those limbs were still hers even if they didn't obey. Evelyn's breath hitched. Tears burned behind her closed eyelids, hot and unwelcome. She hadn't cried in 18 months, had locked that weakness away with everything else she couldn't afford to feel. It's okay, Marcus said quietly. Let it happen. I don't cry. The words came out strangled. You're not crying, you're releasing. His hand moved. Evelyn heard the rustle of fabric, but he didn't touch her, just stayed close, present, witnessing. Your body has been holding this for 18 months. It's tired. The tears came then, silent and fierce, tracking down Evelyn's face while she kept her eyes closed and her breathing steady and her awareness fixed on that impossible warmth in her left foot. She cried for the marriage that had turned her into furniture, for the jump that was supposed to be freedom but became a different cage, for the months of pretending her wheelchair was a choice instead of a prison. And she cried because for the first time since the fall, her body felt like it might remember how to be whole. When the tears finally stopped, Evelyn opened her eyes. Marcus was still sitting across from her, patient and calm, like watching billionaires cry on his floor was a normal Friday morning activity. That was mortifying, she said, her voice rough. That was brave. He stood, offered his hand. Ready to try something harder? What could be harder than that? Trusting me to touch you. Evelyn's spine went rigid. I know. That's why it's hard. Marcus kept his hand extended, steady. I'm going to help you into a different position. I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing before I do it. You can say stop at any point, but if you want to know what your body can do, we need to work with it, not just think about it. Every instinct Evelyn had screamed to refuse. She'd built walls specifically to keep people from touching her, from seeing her weakness, from having power over her body that she couldn't control. But that warmth in her left foot was still there, faint but real. And maybe, just maybe, Marcus was right. Maybe trust was the harder work, the necessary work. Okay, she whispered. Marcus's smile was small but genuine. I'm going to place my hand on your lower back to help you balance while we adjust your position. Is that acceptable? Yes. His hand was warm through her shirt, firm but not controlling. He moved slowly, narrating each adjustment, helping her shift from sitting to lying on her back, her legs extended in front of her. The position felt vulnerable in a way the wheelchair never did. Exposed, open, honest. Now, Marcus said, kneeling beside her, I'm going to place my hands on your left calf, just resting there. building neural awareness. Tell me if you feel anything. His hand settled gently on her leg. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, trying to feel something, anything. At first there was only the familiar nothing. Then, pressure, she gasped. I feel pressure. Good. That's good. Marcus didn't move his hands. That's your nervous system remembering the map. Your brain is relearning that this leg exists. Will this lead to... Evelyn couldn't finish the question, couldn't let herself hope that far. I don't know, Marcus said honestly. Everybody is different. Sarah took 3 months before she could wiggle her toes voluntarily. But she also had doctors who believed psychological paralysis was reversible. Your situation is more complex. Because I jumped. Because you're still protecting yourself. Marcus's hands remained steady on her calf. And until you decide you're ready to stop protecting yourself, your body will keep you safe the only way it knows how. By keeping me paralyzed. By keeping you from making choices that might hurt you again. He released her legs slowly. That's enough for today. This kind of work is exhausting, even when it looks like we're doing nothing. Evelyn let him help her back into her wheelchair, the transfer easier this time, less terrifying. Her body felt strange, heavy and light simultaneously, like she'd run a marathon while sitting still. Same time Monday? Marcus asked. If you want to continue, I need to think about it. Evelyn wheeled toward the door, needing distance, needing air. It's a lot. It is. Marcus opened the door for her. Take your time. But Ms. Shaw, what you felt today was real. Your body is trying to talk to you. Whether you listen is your choice. Evelyn made it to the car before the shaking started again. Robert opened the door without comment, helped her transfer, stowed her wheelchair with practiced efficiency. Home, Ms. Shaw? Yes, home. But as Robert pulled into traffic and Manhattan blurred past, Evelyn realized she didn't know where home was anymore. Not the penthouse where she'd built her cage. Not the VIP room at La Lumiere where she pretended to have a life. Maybe home was something she'd have to rebuild, starting with the terrifying possibility that her body might remember how to move. She pulled out her phone, stared at Marcus's number. Monday. She could make it to Monday. She could survive 3 days with the memory of warmth in her left foot and the knowledge that crying hadn't killed her. Maybe that was progress. Maybe that was enough for now. Evelyn closed her eyes and let the city carry her home, her body still humming with the echo of sensation, her mind still spinning with the dangerous thought that Marcus Reed might be right about everything. Marcus watched Evelyn's car disappear into traffic, then closed the door and leaned against it, exhausted. 2 hours. They'd worked for just 2 hours and he felt like he'd run a triathlon. This was the part Sarah's journal never captured. The weight of holding someone else's hope when they were too afraid to hold it themselves. The responsibility of witnessing without controlling, supporting without saving. He moved to the mat, rolled it up mechanically, and tried not to think about the look on Evelyn's face when she'd felt pressure in her calf. That combination of terror and wonder, like her body had betrayed her by responding. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily's school. Early dismissal today due to teacher training. Pickup at 1 p.m. Marcus glanced at the clock. Noon. He had just enough time to shower, change, and collect his daughter before the afternoon shift at the restaurant. Just enough time to transition from whatever he was with Evelyn to being a father, a janitor, a man with a life that didn't revolve around other people's paralysis. Except he couldn't stop thinking about it. Sarah had been different. Sarah's paralysis had been sudden, complete, and without the psychological complexity that tangled through Evelyn's situation. The path forward had been clear, if brutal. Convince her body it could move again through repetition, patience, and relentless showing up. But Evelyn had jumped, had chosen destruction, and some part of her was still choosing it, still holding her body hostage to protect herself from making that choice again. Marcus wasn't sure he knew how to navigate that. Wasn't sure anyone did. His phone rang. An unknown number. For a wild second, he thought it might be Evelyn calling to cancel, to say this was insane, to protect herself the way she'd been doing for 18 months. Instead, a woman's voice. Is this Marcus Reed? Speaking. This is Dr. Patricia Kim from Manhattan Neurology. I'm calling about a patient who mentioned your name, Evelyn Shaw. She's requested that I consult with you regarding her case. Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. I'm not a medical professional, Dr. Kim. I'm aware of your credentials, Mr. Reed, or lack thereof. Dr. Kim's voice was crisp, professional, with an edge that suggested she didn't appreciate having her time wasted. However, Ms. Shaw was quite insistent. She claims you've observed movement in her left foot that her medical team has missed. I'd like to understand what you're seeing. With respect, doctor, I think you should ask Ms. Shaw about that directly. I'm asking you. Now the edge had teeth. Ms. Shaw is a complicated patient with a complicated history. If you're encouraging false hope or practicing medicine without a license, I need to know now before the situation becomes a liability. Marcus took a breath, choosing his words carefully. I observed what appeared to be voluntary toe movement in response to emotional stimulus. I suggested that her paralysis might have a psychological component that traditional physical therapy hasn't addressed. That's all? And what qualifies you to make that assessment? My wife had psychological paralysis after a car accident. I helped her recover mobility over 6 months. I'm not claiming expertise. I'm claiming experience. Silence on the other end. Then, Ms. Shaw mentioned your wife passed away. She did. Cancer. 2 years ago. I'm sorry for your loss. Dr. Kim's tone softened fractionally. Mr. Reed, I'm going to be direct with you. Evelyn Shaw is a woman who's been through significant trauma, physical and psychological. If you're working with her, even informally, you need to understand the stakes. False hope can be as damaging as the original injury. I understand that. Marcus moved to the window, watched traffic flow below. I'm not promising her anything except presence. But doctor, her body responded today. I saw it. She felt it. If there's even a chance that means something, don't we owe it to her to explore it? Another pause. What did she feel? Pressure. When I placed my hands on her left calf, she reported feeling pressure. That's... Dr. Kim stopped. That's not consistent with her diagnosis. I know. Unless the original diagnosis was incomplete. The doctor's voice had shifted into the careful tone of someone reconsidering assumptions. There are documented cases of functional neurological disorder presenting as paralysis, especially following psychological trauma. If Ms. Shaw's fall was, if she jumped, she needs more than physical therapy, Marcus finished. She needs someone to help her feel safe in her own body again. And you think you're qualified to do that? No, but I think I'm willing to try. And right now, that might be enough. Dr. Kim sighed. I'm going to send you some information. Research on FND, case studies, therapeutic approaches. If you're going to do this, do it informed. And Mr. Reed, if you see any signs of deterioration, psychological or physical, you contact me immediately. Evelyn Shaw might not be my favorite patient, but she deserves competent care. Understood. Thank you, doctor. The call ended. Marcus stood at the window watching the city move and felt the weight of what he'd just committed to settling onto his shoulders. Evelyn Shaw wasn't just a woman who needed help walking. She was a woman who needed to remember why walking, why living, was worth the risk of falling again. And Marcus had promised to help her find that answer, armed with nothing but the memory of his wife's journal and the stubborn belief that impossible things happened when someone showed up. He checked the time. 12:30. Time to pick up Lily and remember that some battles were won with presence, not expertise. Time to show up. Lily Reed knew something was different the moment her dad picked her up from school. He had the look, the one that meant he was carrying someone else's weight along with his own. She'd seen it after Mom died, when he'd tried to pretend everything was fine while his eyes told a different story. Who is she? Lily asked as soon as her seatbelt clicked. Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Who's who, Lily Flower? The person you're helping, the one who makes you look like you're thinking too much. Her dad smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. A woman who's having trouble walking. I'm trying to help her remember how. Like you helped Mom. Sort of, but different. Lily considered this. She was 7, not stupid. She understood that Dad helped people because it made him feel closer to Mom, like if he could save enough other people, Maybe it would balance out the one he couldn't save. Mrs. Chen said that was called displacement. Lily called it dad being dad.
Is she nice? Lily asked. She's scared, Marcus said carefully, which sometimes makes people seem not nice, even when they are. Mom was scared too, at first. She was. Marcus's voice went soft. But she trusted me anyway. That was brave of her. Lily watched buildings slide past her window. Does this lady trust you? Not yet, but maybe she will. You should bring her cookies, Lily suggested. Everyone trusts people who bring cookies. Marcus laughed, a real laugh this time. That's actually excellent advice, Lil. Thank you. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lily asked the question that had been bothering her since Dad started getting that look again. What happens if you can't help her? Like with Mom? The car slowed for a red light. Marcus turned to look at her properly, his expression serious but not sad. Then I tried. And trying matters, even when it doesn't work. Does it? Lily's voice was small. Matter, I mean,
if the person still ends up hurt. Yes. Marcus reached back, squeezed her hand. Because showing up for someone, really showing up, tells them they're worth the effort. Even if the ending isn't what we hoped for, that message stays. Lily wanted to believe him, wanted to think that all of Dad's helping and trying and showing up actually meant something instead of just being a way to avoid feeling sad about Mom. But she was 7, not stupid. And she knew that sometimes people helped others because it was easier than helping themselves. The light turned green. They drove home. And Lily made a mental note to keep an eye on her dad because someone had to make sure he didn't disappear into other people's problems so far that he forgot to come back. Saturday morning, Evelyn woke to an email from Dr. Kim that changed everything. The subject line was simple. Your case. New considerations. She opened it with trembling hands. Ms. Shaw, I spoke with Marcus Reed yesterday. While I maintain significant reservations about involving non-medical personnel in your care, I cannot ignore what he observed. The movement you reported during your session is not consistent with the structural damage documented in your medical records. I'm recommending a comprehensive reevaluation, including psychological assessment. There's emerging research on functional neurological disorder, what was previously termed conversion disorder, that presents similarly to structural paralysis but has different treatment protocols. If you're willing, I'd like to schedule you for a full workup next week. In the meantime, I'm attaching several research papers for your review. Professionally, Dr. Patricia Kim Evelyn read the email 3 times. Then she opened the attachments, dense medical papers about minds and bodies and the complex ways trauma could lock someone in place without visible injury. The research was both terrifying and validating. Case studies of patients who'd lost mobility after emotional trauma. Treatment protocols involving gradual exposure, therapeutic movement, psychological intervention. Success rates that varied wildly depending on patient cooperation and emotional processing. One phrase appeared repeatedly. The body keeps the score. Evelyn sat in her home office, surrounded by the architecture of her carefully controlled life, and realized Marcus Reed had been right about everything. Her paralysis wasn't weakness, it was protection. And until she addressed why her body had chosen protection over function, no amount of physical therapy would matter. She pulled out her phone, found Marcus's number, and typed before she could talk herself out of it. Monday, 10 a.m. I'll be there. And Marcus, thank you for seeing what no one else did. His response came 30 seconds later. You saw it too. You were just afraid to believe it. See you Monday. Evelyn set the phone down and wheeled to her window. Below, the city stretched in every direction, millions of people moving through their lives, their bodies obeying commands without question. She'd been one of them once. Could be again, maybe, if she was brave enough to stop protecting herself from the possibility. The weekend stretched ahead, suddenly full of potential instead of just empty hours to survive. Evelyn pulled up the research papers again, started reading in earnest, and felt something she hadn't allowed herself in 18 months. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying, absolutely necessary hope. And for the first time since the fall, it didn't feel like a threat. Monday arrived with the kind of cold that turned breath visible and made the city feel sharp-edged and unforgiving. Evelyn sat in her town car watching Marcus's building approach, her stomach twisting with anxiety that had nothing to do with the weather. She'd spent the weekend reading Dr. Kim's research papers until the words blurred together, until the clinical language of functional neurological disorder became a mirror reflecting truths she'd spent 18 months avoiding. The body keeps the score. Her body had been keeping score since the moment she'd stood on that balcony, since Richard had reduced her to furniture in front of investors who nodded along like he was describing stock portfolios instead of destroying his wife's dignity. Her body had kept score, tallied the damage, and decided the safest response was to stop responding at all. Robert pulled to the curb. "Same protocol, Ms. Shaw?" "Yes. 2 hours." But her voice wavered, and Robert noticed. He always noticed. "You need me to come back earlier, you text. No questions asked." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Evelyn nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and let him help her into the wheelchair. The ramp to Marcus's door felt longer this time, each foot of concrete a commitment to something she still wasn't sure she could sustain. Marcus opened the door wearing the same calm expression he always wore, like billionaires showing up to his apartment for unlicensed physical therapy was just another Monday. "Ms. Shaw, come in." The space had changed since Friday. The furniture was pushed back even further, creating more open floor area. The yoga mat was already spread out, and beside it sat a large mirror propped against the wall, the kind dancers used, full length and unforgiving. "What's that for?" Evelyn wheeled inside, eyeing the mirror with suspicion. "Visual feedback." Marcus closed the door. "Sometimes the brain needs to see movement before it can feel it. Coffee?" "No, let's start." Marcus studied her for a moment, reading something in her expression that made him nod slowly. "You read the research Dr. Kim sent." "Every word, multiple times." Evelyn positioned herself near the mat. "Functional neurological disorder, conversion disorder, 20 different ways to say my mind is holding my body hostage, or that your body is protecting you the only way it knows how." Marcus settled onto the floor, that same cross-legged patience he'd shown Friday. "Did the research scare you?" "It terrified me." The admission came out raw, because it means there's nothing structurally wrong, nothing broken that can't be fixed, which means if I don't get better, it's my fault. "That's not, isn't it?" Evelyn's voice rose. "If this is psychological, if my paralysis is just my damaged mind punishing my body, then every day I spend in this wheelchair is a choice, a failure, proof that I'm too weak or too broken or too—" "Stop." Marcus's voice cut through her spiral, firm but not harsh. "You're doing what you always do, turning vulnerability into performance, making this about weakness instead of survival." Evelyn's hands clenched on her armrests. "You don't know what I always do. I know you've spent 18 months perfecting the art of elegant surrender." Marcus met her eyes steadily. "I know you show up to restaurants alone, sit in rooms designed to make you feel less trapped, and tip generously to maintain the illusion that you're in control. I know you run a tech empire from a wheelchair because professional success is the one area where paralysis can't touch you. And I know you're terrified that if you actually try to walk again and fail, you'll lose the last shred of dignity you've been clutching." The accuracy of it felt like being flayed open. Evelyn wanted to leave, wanted to call Robert, wanted to retreat into the safety of her penthouse where no one saw her this clearly. Instead, she whispered, "What if I can't do this?" "Then we stop, and you'll know you tried." Marcus's expression softened. "But Ms. Shaw, Evelyn, what if you can? What if your body is just waiting for permission to remember?" The use of her first name landed differently than Ms. Shaw, more intimate, more honest. Evelyn felt the weight of it, the shift from professional distance to something that required more courage. "Okay," she said quietly. "Tell me what to do." They started the same way as Friday, breathing exercises, building that foundation of presence before attempting anything physical. But today, Marcus added the mirror. He positioned it so that when Evelyn transferred to the mat, she could see her full reflection. "I want you to look at yourself," he said. "Not critically, Not with judgment, just observe. Evelyn forced herself to meet her own eyes in the mirror. She looked tired, scared, older than 42, though maybe that was just the harsh honesty of her reflection without the careful construction of makeup and professional armor. "What do you see?" Marcus asked. "Someone who's barely holding it together." "Look deeper." Evelyn studied her reflection, the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped her thighs like she was bracing for impact, the careful blankness of her expression that hid everything churning underneath. "I see someone who's been performing strength for so long she's forgotten what real strength looks like," she said finally. "Good. That's good." Marcus moved to kneel beside her, visible in the mirror's edge. "Now I'm going to touch your left leg again. Same as Friday. Just presence and pressure. Keep watching yourself in the mirror." His hand settled on her calf, warm and steady. Evelyn watched in the mirror, saw herself flinch slightly at the contact, saw the fear flash across her face before she locked it down. "Don't hide," Marcus said quietly. "Let yourself feel whatever comes up." The pressure registered first, that same awareness from Friday, her nervous system remembering the map of her body. But today something else came with it, a memory, sharp and unwelcome. Richard's hands on her shoulders at that party, steering her toward the balcony with practiced ease. "Take a moment, darling. You're looking peaked." "I felt him push me," Evelyn breathed, her eyes locked on the mirror. "Not literally, but the way he moved me, like I was furniture he was rearranging, like my body was just another thing he owned." Marcus's hands remained steady on her calf. "What did you want to do in that moment?" "Run, fight, scream." The words tumbled out faster now. "Anything except stand there smiling while he paraded me around like proof of his excellent taste." "So you jumped instead?" "So I jumped." Evelyn watched tears track down her reflection's face, not bothering to hide them this time. "I jumped because at least falling was mine. At least destruction was a choice I made instead of something he did to me." "And your body heard that choice," Marcus said. "Heard you say that you'd rather be broken than controlled. So when you survived the fall, your body gave you exactly what you asked for, a different kind of control." The logic of it was devastating. Evelyn had spent 18 months thinking her paralysis was punishment, when really it was the truest expression of agency she'd managed. Her body had listened, had protected her the only way it knew how. "How do I undo that?" Her voice cracked. "How do I convince my body that I don't need protection anymore?" "By showing it." Marcus released her legs slowly. "By proving that movement doesn't mean surrender, that walking doesn't mean going back to being furniture." "I don't know if I can." "You already are." Marcus gestured to the mirror. "Look at yourself right now. Really look." Evelyn forced her eyes to the reflection. She expected to see weakness, defeat, the crumbling of carefully maintained walls. Instead, she saw something raw and real. A woman sitting with her pain instead of performing around it. A woman choosing honesty over elegance. "I see someone who's still fighting," she whispered. "Exactly," Marcus smiled. "Now, let's teach your body a new way to fight." They worked for 90 minutes, building on Friday's foundation. Marcus guided her through micro-movements, tiny contractions, mental rehearsals of motion, visualization exercises that felt absurd until they didn't. He explained the neuroscience as they went, how mirror neurons fired when she watched him move, how imagination could lay neural pathways that actual movement would later follow. And slowly, incrementally, Evelyn felt something shift. Not dramatic, not the sudden miracle of sensation flooding back, just a gradual awareness that her body was still hers, still listening, still capable of response if she could find the courage to ask. "That's enough for today," Marcus said finally. "This work is exhausting, even when it looks like nothing's happening." Evelyn nodded, too drained to argue. The transfer back to her wheelchair felt heavier this time, her arms shaking with effort, or emotion, or both. "Same time Wednesday?" Marcus asked. "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. "And Marcus, the research Dr. Kim sent mentioned something about water therapy, pools. Would that help?" Marcus's expression shifted, something like excitement flickering across his face. "Sarah loved the pool.
Said it was the first place she felt free again, where her body could move without gravity judging every mistake. I haven't been swimming since... Evelyn stopped. Since before the marriage, before Richard, before everything that led to the balcony. I don't even know if I remember how.
Your body remembers. Marcus walked her to the door.
I'll make some calls. There's an accessible pool at the community center. Private hours for therapy sessions. If you're willing to try. I'm terrified of trying. I know. Try anyway. Evelyn made it to the car before the shaking started again, her body processing everything that had surfaced in Marcus's living room. Robert took one look at her face and started driving without asking questions, giving her the privacy to fall apart in the back seat where no one could witness it. But falling apart didn't feel like weakness this time. It felt like the necessary destruction that came before rebuilding. It felt like hope doing its brutal work, cracking through defenses she'd thought were permanent. By the time they reached her penthouse, Evelyn had made a decision. But the message hit Evelyn's phone at 8 p.m. Monday night when she was reviewing quarterly reports and pretending her hands weren't still shaking from the session with Marcus. The sender was anonymous. The subject line was simple. The truth about Evelyn Shaw. She almost deleted it, almost let it vanish into the digital void where all anonymous cowardice belonged. But something made her open it instead. Maybe curiosity, maybe self-destruction, maybe just the lifetime habit of facing threats head-on. The email contained a single link to a gossip blog she'd never heard of. The article was already live, already spreading, already poisoning the carefully controlled narrative she'd maintained since the fall. The headline made her stomach drop. Tech billionaire's fake recovery, Evelyn Shaw's desperate grab for attention. The article was vicious. It claimed unnamed sources had revealed she was faking progress with an unlicensed therapist to generate publicity before a major product launch. It suggested her paralysis had always been psychosomatic, implying she'd manufactured the disability for sympathy. It called her a fraud, a spectacle, undeserving of second chances. Worst of all, it was accompanied by photos, grainy but recognizable, of her entering Marcus's building. Of Marcus himself, identified by name, his janitor uniform visible in one shot. The caption read, "Shaw's miracle worker is actually a custodial worker with no medical credentials." Evelyn read the article 3 times, each pass making her feel smaller, more exposed, more foolish for believing that privacy was possible, or that hope was safe, or that anything good could survive contact with public scrutiny. Her phone rang. Her assistant, voice tight with stress. "Ms. Shaw, have you seen?" "I've seen it." "The PR team wants guidance. Do we deny, confirm, issue a statement about..." "Nothing." Evelyn's voice came out flat, dead. "We say nothing." "But Ms. Shaw, this is already trending. The board is asking questions. Investors are..." "I said nothing." She ended the call, silenced her phone, and sat in the dark of her office while the article spread like poison through the bloodstream of the internet. Someone had been watching her. Someone had followed her to Marcus's apartment, taken photos, weaponized her attempt at healing into ammunition for her destruction. Someone wanted her to fail publicly, spectacularly, completely. And the worst part, the part that made bile rise in her throat, was knowing they were probably right. She was a fraud. Not in the way the article claimed, but in the deeper truth that she'd spent 18 months performing acceptance when really she was just hiding. Performing strength when really she was terrified. Performing recovery now, when really she had no idea if her body would ever cooperate. Evelyn wheeled to her bedroom, transferred to her bed with mechanical precision, and stared at the ceiling while shame and rage and despair took turns shredding what was left of her composure. She wouldn't go back to Marcus's apartment. Couldn't. Not now that someone was watching, documenting, turning her private struggle into public entertainment. She'd cancel Wednesday's session, cancel everything, return to the safety of her wheelchair and her solitude and her elegant surrender. It was easier that way. Safer. Her phone buzzed despite being silenced, an emergency override, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "I saw the article. I know you're scared. I know you want to disappear. Don't. We're just getting started." Marcus Evelyn stared at the message, her vision blurring with tears she'd sworn she wouldn't cry. How did he know? How could he possibly understand that her first instinct was always to retreat, to protect herself by removing herself from the battlefield? Another text. Sarah used to say courage isn't the absence of fear. It's showing up anyway, even when everyone's watching, even when they're hoping you fail, especially then. The tears came harder now, hot and bitter and exhausting. Evelyn curled around her phone like it was the only solid thing in a world that kept trying to break her. A third text. You don't owe anyone your recovery. Not the board, not the investors, not the anonymous cowards hiding behind gossip blogs. You only owe it to yourself. If you want to keep going, I'm here. If you want to stop, I understand. Either way, what we're doing isn't a spectacle. It's real. Evelyn's hands shook so hard she could barely type her response. How do I do this when everyone's watching? Marcus's reply came immediately. The same way you do it when no one is. One breath at a time. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think that public scrutiny was just noise, that anonymous cruelty couldn't touch the private work of healing. But the article had done its damage, planting doubt like landmines in the fragile territory of her hope. What if she was being naive? What if Marcus was wrong and the neurologists were right, and all of this, the breathing, the visualization, the impossible warmth in her left foot, was just placebo effect and desperation? What if she tried and failed in front of everyone? Evelyn's phone buzzed again. This time, a different number. Dr. Kim. Ms. Shaw, I saw the article. Ignore it. What we discussed, the FND diagnosis, the treatment protocol, is legitimate medicine, not spectacle. If you want to proceed with the reevaluation, my office can schedule it discreetly. Don't let anonymous cowards steal your chance at recovery. 2 messages in 10 minutes, both telling her the same thing. Keep going. Don't retreat. The cruelty of strangers didn't change the truth of what her body was trying to tell her. But could she do it? Could she show up to Marcus's apartment knowing someone might be photographing her? Could she try when failure would be documented and dissected and used as proof that she was exactly what the article claimed, a fraud, a spectacle, undeserving? Evelyn lay in the dark, her body heavy and useless beneath expensive sheets, and tried to find the answer, tried to locate the part of herself that had built a tech empire from nothing, that had survived a marriage designed to erase her, that had jumped from a balcony and lived to tell about it. That woman, the one who existed before fear became her primary language. What would she do? The answer came slowly, reluctantly, but with the ring of truth. She'd show up anyway. She'd show up because retreat was what they expected, because disappearing was what they wanted, because the only way to prove she wasn't a spectacle was to keep doing the private, unglamorous work of healing regardless of who was watching. Evelyn picked up her phone and typed a response to Marcus. Wednesday, 10 a.m. And Marcus, don't read the comments on that article. They'll break your heart. His reply was immediate. I don't need to read them. I already know what they say. Courage isn't about what other people think. It's about what you know to be true. Evelyn set her phone on the nightstand and closed her eyes. Sleep wouldn't come, probably wouldn't come for hours. But she could rest in the decision, could let her body process the violence of exposure, while her mind held on to the fragile truth that trying was worth it, even when everyone was hoping she'd fail. Especially then. Wednesday morning felt like walking to an execution, if walking had been something Evelyn could do. She'd spent Tuesday in crisis management mode, reassuring the board, calming investors, issuing a brief statement through her PR team that said nothing while sounding authoritative. The gossip article had spread further than she'd feared, spawning think pieces about disability fraud and the desperation of aging billionaires clinging to relevance. Through it all, she'd maintained her composure, performed strength, protected the empire she'd built from the architecture of her wheelchair. But now, pulling up to Marcus's building with Robert at the wheel, Evelyn felt her carefully maintained control fracturing. There was someone with a camera out there, someone who wanted to document her failure. Someone who would turn her private healing into public humiliation. Ms. Shaw, Robert's voice cut through her spiral. There's a man across the street. Has been since we arrived. Camera with a long lens. Evelyn's blood went cold. Can you? Already called it in. NYPD is sending someone to check if he has permission to photograph on private property. But Ms. Shaw, Robert met her eyes in the rearview mirror. You've got 2 choices.
You can let that bastard dictate your life, or you can walk, roll, past him like he doesn't exist.
Easy for you to say. You're not the one being turned into a cautionary tale. No, ma'am. I'm just the one who's watched you build an empire while half the tech world was betting against you. Robert's expression was fierce. You've faced down boardrooms full of men who thought you were decoration. You've survived a marriage designed to destroy you. You really gonna let some coward with a camera decide what you can do? The accuracy of it, the echo of Marcus's words about courage despite witnesses, gave Evelyn the push she needed. She straightened in her seat, checked her reflection in the window, and nodded to Robert. Let's go.
He helped her into the wheelchair, his body positioned to block the photographer's angle, and Evelyn rolled toward Marcus's door with her head high and her expression carefully neutral. She could feel the camera tracking her, recording her vulnerability, turning her private struggle into content. She kept rolling. Marcus opened the door before she could knock, his face serious. I saw the photographer. I can call the police, have him removed. No! Evelyn wheeled past him into the apartment. Let him take his pictures. Let him write his articles. I'm not performing for him anymore. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. That's the first time you've sounded like the woman who built a tech empire. That woman took a very long vacation. Evelyn positioned herself near the mat, her hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. She's trying to remember how to exist. They settled into the familiar routine, breathing exercises, visualization, the careful rebuilding of neural pathways. But today felt different, harder. Like the photographer's lens had added weight to everything, turning private progress into performance. Evelyn couldn't focus. Couldn't find the quiet center where sensation lived. Every time she tried to feel her left foot, her mind skipped to the article, the comments, the 1,000 ways she was being judged and found wanting. You're not here, Marcus said finally. Where are you? Reading comment sections in my head. Evelyn opened her eyes, met his gaze in the mirror. They're calling me pathetic, desperate, a cautionary tale about women who can't accept aging or disability with grace. And you believe them? I believe they're louder than my body. Her voice cracked. I believe that trying and failing publicly will prove they're right about everything. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, left the room, and returned with a worn notebook. Sarah's journal, Evelyn realized with a start. Day 94, he read aloud. The nurses think I'm inspiring. They tell me I'm brave, that I'm a fighter, that I'm proof that attitude matters. They don't know that yesterday I screamed at Marcus for 20 minutes because I hate him for making me hope. They don't know that I cry every night because my body feels like a stranger. They don't know that brave is just another word for terrified but trying anyway. He looked up from the journal. Sarah spent 6 months being watched by nurses, doctors, therapists, all of them expecting her to be some kind of inspiration. You know what she told me once? She said the hardest part wasn't the paralysis. It was the audience. The constant awareness that her struggle was everyone else's teaching moment. How did she handle it? She stopped trying to handle it. Marcus set the journal aside. She stopped performing recovery and just focused on the work. Some days that meant progress. Some days it meant crying on the bathroom floor, but it was always real even when people were watching. I don't know if I can do that. Evelyn's voice was barely audible. Be real when everyone's waiting for me to fail. Then don't do it for them. Marcus moved back to his position beside her. Do it for the woman who jumped off a balcony because at least falling was hers. Do it for her and tell everyone else to go to hell. The permission in those words, the explicit rejection of the audience that had haunted her since Tuesday, cracked something open in Evelyn's chest. She closed her eyes, let the tears come without hiding them, and for the first time since the article dropped, she stopped performing. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I'm scared that they're right, that I'm pathetic and desperate and making a spectacle of myself. They're wrong. Marcus's voice was quiet but certain. You're not making a spectacle. You're fighting for your life. There's a difference. Evelyn opened her eyes, looked at herself in the mirror, tears streaming, defenses shattered, nothing left but raw honesty. And in that reflection, beneath the fear and shame and exhaustion, she saw something she'd forgotten existed: determination. The same stubborn fire that had built her empire, that had survived Richard, that had chosen the balcony over continued erasure. "Okay," she said, "let's try again." They worked for another hour, and this time Evelyn stopped fighting the audience in her head, stopped performing strength, and just focused on presence, on the breath moving through her lungs, on the faint awareness building in her left leg, on the impossible possibility that her body might remember how to be whole. And slowly, so slowly she almost missed it, something shifted. Not dramatic movement, not the miracle everyone expected, just a whisper of sensation spreading from her left foot up through her calf, her nervous system waking inch by careful inch. "There," she breathed. "I feel it, more than before. Like my leg is remembering it belongs to me." Marcus's smile was quiet but genuine. "That's your body telling you the audience doesn't matter. Only the truth does." When the session ended, Evelyn felt wrung out but somehow lighter. The photographer was still across the street when she left. She could feel his lens tracking her, but this time she didn't care. Let him take his pictures. Let him write his articles. None of it could touch what was happening in the private space between her body and her belief. Robert drove her home in comfortable silence, and for the first time since the fall, Evelyn felt something dangerous and necessary settling into her bones. Not hope, exactly. Something harder, more permanent. The decision to keep going, even when everyone was watching, even when they expected her to fail, especially then. The call from Dr. Kim came Friday afternoon while Evelyn was in back-to-back meetings. Her mind split between quarterly projections and the persistent warmth she could now summon in her left leg with focused breathing. Her assistant buzzed through on the private line reserved for emergencies. "Ms. Shaw, Dr. Kim says it's urgent." Evelyn excused herself from the video conference, wheeled to her private office, and picked up. "Doctor, we have your test results from the comprehensive workup." Dr. Kim's voice carried an edge Evelyn couldn't identify. Excitement, maybe, or vindication. "You were right to push for reevaluation. The original diagnosis missed critical factors." Evelyn's hands tightened on the phone. "Meaning?" "Meaning there's no structural damage preventing mobility. The imaging is clear. Your spinal cord shows healing consistent with the timeline of your injury, but no permanent severing, no catastrophic nerve damage. What you have is textbook functional neurological disorder overlaying genuine but resolved physical trauma." The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they landed like an indictment. "So I've been paralyzed for 18 months because my mind decided my body shouldn't work." That's an oversimplification, but essentially, yes. Dr. Kim paused. "Evelyn, this isn't weakness. FND is a legitimate neurological condition. Your brain created a protective pattern in response to psychological trauma. The fall, the circumstances around it, your body's interpretation of threat, all of it contributed to a neural pathway that prioritized safety over function. Can you fix it?" The question came out smaller than Evelyn intended. "I can't. But you can." Papers rustled on Dr. Kim's end. "The treatment protocol combines physical therapy with psychological intervention. You'll need to work with a trauma specialist to address the circumstances that led to the fall. And you'll need to continue the movement work you're doing with Marcus Reed." Evelyn's throat tightened. "The unlicensed janitor who's turned me into a gossip blog sensation? The man who saw what trained neurologists missed." Dr. Kim's voice held something close to admiration. "I spoke with him again. His approach, the breathing work, the visualization, the gradual exposure. It's consistent with emerging FND protocols. He's been doing instinctively what research is just now validating. So what do I do?" "You keep showing up. You do the hard work of convincing your body that movement is safe again. And Evelyn?" Dr. Kim's tone softened. "You forgive yourself for surviving the only way you knew how." The call ended. Evelyn sat in her office with Manhattan stretching below, all those people moving through lives where bodies obeyed without question, and felt the weight of Dr. Kim's words settling into her bones. No structural damage, no permanent injury. Just a mind and body so tangled in protection that they'd forgotten how to exist any other way.
She pulled out her phone, found Marcus's number, and typed, "Dr. Kim called. You were right about everything. I don't know whether to thank you or hate you for it." His response came quickly. Sarah said the same thing, day 127. She chose thank you eventually. "Take your time deciding." Evelyn smiled despite herself, then opened her calendar. The community center pool. Marcus had secured private therapy hours for Monday mornings, water therapy to complement the floor work. The thought of it terrified her. Being in a pool meant being seen in ways the wheelchair didn't expose, meant trusting her body in an element that demanded surrender to buoyancy and physics and the frightening possibility of movement. But Dr. Kim was right. Marcus was right. Her body was ready. It was her mind that needed convincing. She typed another message. "Monday pool session. I'll be there." "But Marcus, if I drown, I'm haunting you." Sarah said that too. She didn't drown. Neither will you. Thus, the weekend passed in a blur of preparation that felt more like procrastination. Evelyn bought a swimsuit, adaptive design, discreet, nothing that would draw attention, and immediately second-guessed every choice. She researched water therapy protocols until the information blurred. She practiced the breathing exercises Marcus had taught her, trying to maintain that fragile connection to her left leg, even as anxiety tried to sever it. Saturday night, she made the mistake of checking her company's social media. The gossip article had spawned 1,000 opinions about disability, recovery, and whether billionaires deserve second chances. Half the comments were supportive. The other half suggested she was faking for attention, that real disabled people didn't have the luxury of experimental therapy, that her wealth made her struggle illegitimate. Evelyn read them all, each one a small cut, until her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop reading the comments, reading the, "They don't know you. They don't see what I see." She stared at the message, confused, until a second text arrived. "This is Lily, Dad's daughter. I stole his phone because he said you were probably reading mean internet things and making yourself sad. Dad says mean people hide behind computers because they're scared of being seen. He says you're brave for trying, even when everyone's watching. I think he's right. Also, we made you cookies for Monday. Chocolate chip. Dad says everyone trusts people who bring cookies." The message was so unexpected, so purely kind, that Evelyn felt tears burning behind her eyes. A 7-year-old had stolen her father's phone to offer encouragement to a stranger. A child who'd lost her mother understood something about courage that most adults missed. Evelyn typed carefully. "Thank you, Lily. Tell your dad I'll stop reading comments if you promise to save me the biggest cookie." The response was immediate. "Deal. Also, Dad wants his phone back. He says I'm grounded, but he's smiling, so I don't think he means it." Evelyn set her phone down and closed her laptop, cutting herself off from the chorus of strangers who thought they knew her story. Lily was right. They didn't see what Marcus saw. Didn't understand that trying when failure was possible took more courage than succeeding when the outcome was guaranteed. She spent Sunday preparing differently, not researching, not analyzing, just being present with her body. She practiced the visualization exercises, focused on the growing awareness in her left leg, let herself imagine what freedom might feel like if her body remembered how to move without fear. By Sunday night, she was ready. Terrified, but ready. Monday morning arrived with autumn rain turning the city soft and gray. Evelyn met Marcus at the community center entrance, where he waited with Lily, both of them holding umbrellas and a small bakery box that undoubtedly contained the promised cookies. "Ms. Shaw, this is my daughter, Lily." Marcus's introduction was simple, but his expression held something protective. "Lily wanted to meet the woman I've been helping." Lily stepped forward, her expression serious beyond her 7 years. "Dad says you're learning to walk again. That's really hard. Harder than learning the first time because you remember when it was easy." The accuracy of that observation, delivered in a child's clear voice, hit Evelyn harder than expected. "You're right, it is harder, but your dad is a good teacher." "He was Mom's teacher too." Lily held out the bakery box. "We made you cookies, chocolate chip like I promised. The biggest one is on top." Evelyn accepted the box, her throat tight. "Thank you, Lily. This is very kind." "Dad says kindness is just showing up when someone needs you." Lily glanced at Marcus, who nodded slightly. "So I'm showing up.
Is that okay? More than okay? Evelyn looked at Marcus over his daughter's head. You're raising a remarkable human. She came with the package. Marcus squeezed Lily's shoulder. Mrs. Chen is picking her up in 10 minutes for school. I wanted you two to meet first. They waited together in the community center lobby, making awkward small talk while rain streaked the windows. Lily asked questions with the directness of childhood. Why Evelyn used a wheelchair, whether it was scary to try walking again, if she liked chocolate chip cookies, or was just being polite. Evelyn answered honestly, something about Lily's openness making deception feel impossible. When Mrs. Chen arrived, Lily hugged her father, then surprised Evelyn by approaching the wheelchair and extending her hand formally. Good luck today, Ms. Shaw. Dad believes you can do this. I believe him. Thank you, Lily. Evelyn shook the small hand carefully. That means more than you know. Then Lily was gone, and Marcus was leading Evelyn through quiet hallways to the pool entrance, and the moment of reckoning was arriving faster than she was ready for. The pool area was empty. Marcus had arranged private hours, and the water gleamed under soft lighting, chlorine sharp in the air. A lift system waited at the pool's edge, designed to lower wheelchair users into the water with dignity intact. We'll start shallow, Marcus said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. Just getting you comfortable with buoyancy. No pressure to move, no expectations, just presence. Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. She'd changed in the accessible locker room, the adaptive swimsuit feeling strange against skin that hadn't seen water in years. Now, sitting at the pool's edge while Marcus operated the lift, she felt more exposed than she had in any boardroom, any marriage, any moment since the fall. The lift lowered her slowly into the water. The temperature was perfect, warm enough to relax muscles, cool enough to feel alert. But what struck Evelyn most was the buoyancy. For the first time in 18 months, her body felt light. The weight that kept her pressed into the wheelchair, that constant reminder of gravity's victory, simply vanished. How does it feel? Marcus stood in the shallow end, water to his waist, his hands visible and ready, but not touching. Strange. Evelyn's voice echoed across the empty pool. Like I'm not quite real. Like I could float away. You're more real here than anywhere else. Marcus moved closer, slow and deliberate. In the water, your body doesn't have to fight gravity. It can just exist. Just remember. He was right. Evelyn could feel it, the way buoyancy removed the architecture of weight, leaving only the essential self. Her legs floated in front of her, pale and thin from disuse, but somehow less foreign than they'd been on land. I'm going to support your back, Marcus said. Help you float. Is that acceptable? Evelyn nodded. His hand settled against her spine, broad and steady. And suddenly she was horizontal in the water, staring at the ceiling while her body remembered what suspension felt like. Breathe, Marcus instructed. Same pattern as on the mat. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. She breathed. The rhythm steadied her, and gradually Evelyn felt her muscles unclenching, releasing tension she'd carried for so long it had become part of her architecture. Now, Marcus said quietly, try to move your left foot. Not a kick, just a flutter. The smallest motion you can imagine. Evelyn focused on her left foot, visualized the movement, sent the signal down neural pathways that had been closed for 18 months. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, her toes moved. Not much, not dramatically, but unmistakably, voluntarily. Her left toes contracted and released in the water. I did it, she whispered. Marcus, I actually... Again, he said, his voice tight with emotion. Slowly, let your body remember the pattern. She tried again. This time, her whole foot moved, a tiny flutter, barely disturbing the water, but movement nonetheless. Real, voluntary, impossible movement. The tears came fast and silent, tracking down Evelyn's face while she floated in Marcus's hands and felt her body waking up. This wasn't phantom sensation, wasn't spasm or coincidence. This was her body responding to her will, proving that 18 months of paralysis hadn't been permanent, just protective. Keep breathing, Marcus said. Don't let emotion steal your focus. Stay with the sensation. Evelyn forced her breathing steady, kept her attention on her left foot. Slowly, carefully, she practiced the movement. Contract, release, contract, release. Each repetition felt more deliberate, more hers. Now the right foot, Marcus instructed. That one was harder. The right side had always been more resistant, more locked down. But Evelyn tried anyway, sending the signal, visualizing the motion, trusting that her body would remember. Nothing happened. Then, a tremor. The faintest suggestion of movement, like her right foot was considering the possibility but hadn't committed yet. "It's okay," Marcus said. "Asymmetric progress is normal. The left side is leading. The right will follow when it's ready." They worked for 40 minutes, Marcus guiding her through micro movements and visualization while the water held her body in weightless grace. By the time he helped her back onto the lift, Evelyn was exhausted but transformed. Her left foot now responded with increasing reliability. Her right foot showed glimmers of cooperation. And most importantly, she'd felt free for the first time since the fall. Truly free. Her body hers again in ways the wheelchair had made impossible. Marcus wrapped her in towels once she was back in the chair, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes bright with something that might have been hope or pride, or both. "That was extraordinary," he said quietly. "That was terrifying." Evelyn's voice shook. "And amazing, and I want to do it again." Wednesday, same time. Marcus helped her toward the locker room. "But Evelyn, what happened today? That wasn't me. That was you. Your body, your will, your courage. Your hands kept me from drowning." "You were never going to drown." He smiled. "Sarah taught me something important. The therapist doesn't heal anyone. We just hold space while people heal themselves." Evelyn changed in the locker room, her body feeling strange in the wheelchair after the freedom of the pool. When she emerged, Marcus was waiting with the bakery box. "Lily made me promise you'd eat at least one cookie before you left." Evelyn opened the box, selected the largest chocolate chip cookie, still warm, clearly made with care, and took a bite. It was perfect. Sweet and rich and made with the kind of love that couldn't be faked. "Tell Lily these are the best cookies I've ever had. Tell her yourself. She's going to want progress reports." Marcus walked her to the exit where Robert was waiting with the car. "Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pool first, then mat work if you're not too tired." "I'll be there." Evelyn paused at the door, rain still falling beyond the overhang. "Marcus, when I moved my foot today, did you see what I saw? Or am I imagining progress because I want it so badly?" "I saw it." His answer was immediate, certain. "And so did you. That's all that matters." Robert helped her into the car, and as they pulled away from the community center, Evelyn caught a glimpse of Marcus in the rearview mirror, standing in the rain, watching her leave with an expression that reminded her of something she'd almost forgotten, what it felt like when someone believed in you without needing proof. The progress after that first pool session was incremental but undeniable. Wednesday, Evelyn's left foot responded more quickly, the neural pathway strengthening with practice. Friday, her right foot joined in, tentative, uncertain, but present. The following week, she managed to contract her calf muscles, tiny movements that Marcus documented with the careful attention of someone who understood how impossible they were. By the end of the second week, Evelyn could create small ripples in the pool water with both feet. By the third week, she achieved something that made Marcus's careful composure crack into a genuine smile, a weak but voluntary knee bend on her left side. "That's flexion," he said, his voice rough. "Real, controlled flexion." "Do you understand what that means?" Evelyn did. It meant her body was remembering. It meant the paralysis was releasing its grip. It meant walking might actually be possible, not someday in the abstract future, but soon in the concrete present. But with progress came new terror. The better she got, the higher the stakes climbed. The gossip articles had quieted. There were always fresher scandals to dissect. But Evelyn knew the internet had a long memory. If she succeeded publicly, she'd be inspiring. If she failed publicly, she'd be pathetic. There was no middle ground for a woman who'd spent 18 months in a wheelchair. The pressure built slowly, like water behind a dam. Evelyn managed it the way she managed everything, through control, through discipline, through sheer force of will. She showed up to every session, completed every exercise, pushed her body toward mobility with the same ruthless focus she'd brought to building her empire. And then, 3 weeks into water therapy, the dam broke. It happened on a Monday. Evelyn had arrived at the community center tired. She'd been up late reviewing contracts, her body exhausted from the previous week's intensive sessions. But she pushed through anyway, lowered herself into the pool, and began the familiar routine. Marcus noticed immediately. "You're forcing it. Your movements are tight, aggressive. What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm fine." Evelyn focused on her left leg, trying to execute the knee bend that had come easily Friday. But her body refused, locked up. The neural pathway that had been strengthening suddenly closed again. "Try again," Marcus said. "Slower this time. Less force, more presence." She tried, failed. Tried again, failed again. The knee bend that had been possible 3 days ago was gone, and panic started creeping up Evelyn's spine like ice water. "It's not working," she said, her voice rising. "Why isn't it working? I could do this Friday." "Because you're exhausted and trying to muscle through instead of listening to your body." Marcus moved closer, his expression concerned. "This is exactly what Sarah did when she got scared. She'd push and push until her body shut down in self-protection." "I'm not scared," but Evelyn's voice cracked on the words. I have to." "Stop." Marcus's command was gentle but firm. "Right now, we're done for today. We still have 20 minutes, and you need rest more than you need progress." He moved to help her onto the lift. Pushing past your body's limits doesn't build strength, it builds resistance. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to prove she could push through, that she was strong enough to overcome whatever her body was trying to tell her. But as Marcus raised the lift and wrapped her in towels, the exhaustion she'd been denying crashed over her like a wave. "I can't stop," she whispered. "If I stop, I'll lose everything I've gained." "That's fear talking." Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair, his eyes level with hers. "The same fear that's been driving you since the beginning. The fear that if you're not perfect, if you show any weakness, you'll lose the right to try." "Because I will." The words tore out of her. "Because everyone's waiting for me to fail. Because if I stop pushing, if I rest, they'll say I gave up. They'll say I was never really trying. They'll say, 'Who cares what they say?'" Marcus's voice cut through her spiral. "Evelyn, who are you doing this for? The internet strangers who made you a cautionary tale? The board members who think your disability makes you weak? Or yourself?" The question landed like a fist. Evelyn stared at him, water dripping from her hair, her body shaking with exhaustion or emotion or both. "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "It started as mine, but now everyone's watching, and I'm so tired of being watched. And I just want to prove them wrong, but I don't know if that's the same as wanting to walk again." Marcus sat back on his heels, considering. Then he said something that changed everything. "What if you stopped trying to walk for anyone else? What if you walked because your body wants to remember how? Because movement is yours, not theirs?" "I don't know if I can separate those things." Evelyn's voice was small. "Everything I've ever done has been to prove something to someone. I built my company to prove Richard was wrong about me being decorative. I survived the fall to prove I was stronger than he made me feel. I'm trying to walk to prove the internet wrong about me being a spectacle. I don't know who I am if I'm not proving something." "Then maybe that's the real work." Marcus stood, moved to pack up their equipment. "Not teaching your body to walk. Teaching yourself that you're enough without proving anything." The words followed Evelyn home, echoing in the quiet of her town car, haunting her through the evening as she tried and failed to focus on work. She'd spent her entire adult life in performance mode, performing confidence for investors, performing strength for competitors, performing acceptance for the past 18 months. The idea of existing without an audience felt impossible, terrifying. That night, she did something she hadn't done since the fall. She called her ex-husband. Richard answered on the third ring, his voice carrying that familiar condescension. "Evelyn, to what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" "I need to ask you something." Her voice was steady, clinical. "When you introduced me as decorative at that party, did you know what you were doing? Did you understand you were erasing me?" Silence. Then, "I don't recall saying any such thing." "Yes, you do. You said I was lovely, but not much for business. strictly ornamental, in front of a room full of investors. Evelyn's grip tightened on her phone. I jumped off a balcony that night, Richard. Did you know that? I jumped because being your furniture felt worse than being broken. More silence, longer this time. When Richard finally spoke, his voice was different, smaller, almost human. I didn't think you'd actually... Evelyn, I was trying to close a deal. The investor liked traditional values. I was playing to the room. You were erasing me to close a deal. I was doing what I've always done, what we both did, playing the game. Now his voice carried something defensive. You can't blame me for everything, Evelyn. You chose that balcony. You chose to stay paralyzed for 18 months instead of... Instead of what? Heat flooded through her. Instead of trying? I've been trying, Richard. I've been trying so hard that my body shut down today because I can't separate healing from performing, because you taught me that my worth is measured in what I prove to other people. That's not fair. It's absolutely fair. Evelyn's voice was clear, certain. You spent 10 years treating me like decoration, like furniture, like something pretty to admire and move around but never actually listen to. And when I finally tried to escape, my body heard escape and decided paralysis was safer than risking more of your casual erasure. If this is an attempt to blame me for your condition, it's not blame. It's clarity. Evelyn felt something shifting in her chest, some long-held tension finally releasing. I'm calling to tell you that I'm done proving I'm more than what you made me feel like. I'm done performing strength because you made me think I needed permission to exist. I'm walking again, Richard, not for you, not because of you, in spite of you. She ended the call before he could respond, her hands shaking but her heart steady. It wasn't forgiveness. She wasn't ready for that, might never be. But it was release. Permission to stop letting his voice narrate her worth. Evelyn sat in her penthouse, surrounded by the architecture of her solitary life, and realized Marcus was right. The real work wasn't teaching her body to walk. It was teaching herself that she deserved to exist, whole, imperfect, still trying, without needing to prove anything to anyone. That she was enough, just as she was. Even in the wheelchair. Even still learning. Even scared. The next morning, she texted Marcus. I'm taking 2 days off, not giving up, just resting, learning to exist without performing. Is that okay? His response was immediate. That's not okay. That's brave. See you Thursday. For the first time in 18 months, maybe in her entire adult life, Evelyn let herself stop pushing. Let herself rest. Let herself simply be present in her body without demanding it prove anything. And in that stillness, she felt something her frantic striving had made impossible. The quiet certainty that healing was happening whether or not anyone was watching. That she was enough. Even now, especially now, Thursday arrived with the kind of November clarity that made everything feel possible. Evelyn returned to the community center, rested in a way she hadn't been in months, maybe years, her body lighter for having spent 2 days simply existing instead of proving. Marcus met her at the pool entrance with a knowing smile. You look different, he said. I feel different. Evelyn wheeled past him toward the locker room. I called my ex-husband, told him I was done letting his voice define my worth. Then I slept for 14 hours. That's more therapeutic than anything we've done in this pool. Marcus held the door. Ready to try again? Ready to exist again. There's a difference. The water felt like welcome this time instead of challenge. Evelyn lowered herself in, found her floating position, and instead of immediately pushing for progress, she just breathed. Let the buoyancy hold her. Let her body remember it was allowed to simply be. Try the left knee bend, Marcus said after a few minutes. But don't force it. Just ask. See if your body wants to answer. Evelyn focused, sent the signal gently instead of demanding. Her knee bent, smooth, controlled, easier than it had been before her breakdown. She tried the right knee. That one responded too, weaker but present. It's easier when I'm not performing, she whispered. Everything is. Marcus's voice held quiet satisfaction. Your body was waiting for permission to heal without an audience. They worked for an hour, building on the foundation of rest. By the end of the session, Evelyn had achieved something new. a weak but voluntary hip flexion on her left side. The movement was tiny, barely visible, but it meant her body was recruiting muscles that had been dormant for 18 months. "That's extraordinary progress," Marcus said as he helped her back into the wheelchair. "At this rate, you'll be ready for standing work within a few weeks." Standing. The word hung in the air like a promise and a threat. Evelyn had been horizontal or seated for so long that vertical felt like a foreign country, distant, half-remembered, possibly imaginary. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I know. That's when the real work begins." The real work began the following Monday with a phone call that changed everything. Evelyn's executive assistant buzzed through on the priority line, her voice tight with carefully controlled excitement. "Ms. Shaw, there's someone here to see you. She says it's personal, not business. She won't give her name, but she's quite insistent." "I don't take unscheduled meetings. She says she's Richard's sister. She says you'll want to hear what she has to say." Evelyn's blood went cold. Richard's sister, Caroline, they'd been close once, before the marriage soured, before Evelyn became the enemy in a war she hadn't known she was fighting. Caroline had sent a brief email after the fall, expressing concern, but they hadn't spoken in over a year. "Send her in." Caroline Shaw walked into Evelyn's office, looking older than her 50 years, her expression carrying the weight of uncomfortable truths. She sat without being invited, her eyes moving to the wheelchair without the usual careful avoidance. "You look well," Caroline said. "Better than I expected." "What do you want, Caroline?" Evelyn kept her voice neutral, professional. "If Richard sent you to... Richard doesn't know I'm here. He'd be furious if he did." Caroline leaned forward, her hands clasped tight. "I came because I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. My brother is a narcissist, Evelyn. Clinical, diagnosable, textbook narcissist. And I watched him destroy you for a decade without saying a word because family loyalty felt more important than honesty." The confession landed heavy. Evelyn stared at her former sister-in-law, searching for manipulation or agenda, finding only regret. "Why now?" Evelyn asked. "Why tell me this 18 months after I jumped off a balcony to escape him?" "Because I heard what you're doing, the therapy, the recovery work, and I realized you're probably still carrying his voice in your head, still measuring yourself against his metrics." Caroline's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I need you to know that everything he made you feel, the inadequacy, the sense that you were decoration instead of substance, that was his pathology, not your truth." "I'm aware. Are you?" Caroline's voice sharpened. "Because I watched you build an empire to prove him wrong. I watched you stay paralyzed for over a year, and I wonder if part of that was your body saying it was safer to be broken than risk his judgment again. I need you to hear this from someone who shares his blood. You were never the problem. He was. And you don't owe him or anyone else proof that you're whole." The words cracked something open in Evelyn's chest. She'd told herself versions of this truth, had worked with Marcus toward accepting it, but hearing it from Richard's own sister carried different weight. Validation from the source, permission from inside the system that had damaged her. "He called me last week," Caroline continued, "said you'd phoned him, said things about blame and erasure. He was furious, defensive, playing victim like he always does." She met Evelyn's eyes directly. "But underneath the performance, I heard fear. You're getting better, Evelyn. You're reclaiming the power he spent years convincing you that you never had. And that terrifies him." "Good." The word came out fierce. "He should be terrified. I'm done being his cautionary tale." Caroline smiled, sad but genuine. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. Should have stood up for you when Richard was tearing you down in family dinners, board meetings, every space where his opinion mattered more than your dignity." She stood, moved toward the door. "I won't take more of your time. I just needed you to know you're enough, Evelyn. You always were. Walk or don't walk. That's about your body healing, not about proving anything to anyone who made you feel small." She left before Evelyn could respond, the door closing with a soft click that felt like absolution. Evelyn sat in her office overlooking Manhattan, Caroline's words settling into the spaces where Richard's voice had lived for too long, and felt something fundamental shift. She didn't need to walk to be whole. Walking would be freedom, yes, but wholeness was already here, in the courage to try, in the strength to rest, in the radical act of existing without apologizing for taking up space. That afternoon, Evelyn made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Kim, scheduling the psychological intervention the treatment protocol recommended. The second was to Marcus. "I'm ready," she said when he answered. "Ready for what?" "To stand, to try vertical, to stop treating walking like something I have to earn and start treating it like something my body wants to remember." Evelyn's voice was steady, certain. "When can we start?" There was a pause on the other end. Then Marcus said quietly, "Tomorrow. We'll need the parallel bars at the community center. It's going to be hard, Evelyn. Harder than anything we've done so far." "I know. I'm ready anyway." The parallel bars looked like a prison and a promise. Evelyn sat in her wheelchair staring at them, her heart hammering against her ribs while Marcus checked the safety equipment, mats on the floor, the bars positioned at the right height, everything prepared for the moment when horizontal became vertical for the first time in 18 months. "We're going to take this incredibly slow," Marcus said, moving to stand beside her. "First, we transfer you to a sitting position on the mat between the bars. Then we work on bearing weight through your legs while you hold the bars for support. We're not trying to walk today. Just stand. Just remember what vertical feels like." Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. Lily was here today. Marcus had brought her after school, saying his daughter wanted to witness this moment. The 7-year-old sat cross-legged on a mat nearby, her expression serious and encouraging in equal measure. "You can do this, Ms. Shaw," Lily said. "I know it's scary. Mom said scary just means your body is getting ready to be brave." The simple wisdom of it, the echo of Sarah's voice through her daughter, gave Evelyn the courage to nod to Marcus. "Okay, let's try." The transfer from wheelchair to mat went smoothly, Marcus's hand steady and sure. Then came the harder part, maneuvering into position between the parallel bars, her legs extended in front of her, her hands gripping the bars with white-knuckled intensity. "Before we try to stand, I want you to just feel your feet on the ground," Marcus instructed. "Press down gently. Let your legs remember what it feels like to support weight." Evelyn pressed down. Her left leg responded immediately, muscles engaging, nerves firing, the sensation clear and present. Her right leg was slower, more hesitant, but after a moment it too began to wake up. "Good. That's really good." Marcus knelt beside her. "Now we're going to bring your knees under you. I'll support your weight, but I want you to practice the motion. Your body remembers this. Trust it." Moving into a kneeling position was harder than anything they'd done in the pool. Gravity was unforgiving, demanding strength Evelyn wasn't sure she had. But Marcus's hands were there, supporting without controlling, and slowly, so slowly, she found herself on her knees between the bars. "Perfect. Just breathe here for a minute." Marcus's voice was calm, steady. "You're doing great." Evelyn breathed, her body trembling with effort and adrenaline and the sheer impossibility of what was happening. She was upright, not standing yet, but closer than she'd been in 18 months. Her legs were under her, bearing weight, remembering their purpose. "Okay," Marcus said. "Now comes the hard part. We're going to bring one leg forward, your left, the stronger one, and plant that foot. Then we'll push up to standing. I'll be supporting you the whole time. You ready?" "No, but let's do it anyway." Marcus helped her position her left leg, the foot flat on the mat, knee bent. Evelyn could feel every muscle engaging, her body recruiting strength from places she'd forgotten existed. Her hands gripped the parallel bars so hard her knuckles ached. "On 3, Marcus said, his hands positioned at her waist, ready to support. 1, 2, 3. Evelyn pushed. Her left leg straightened, muscles screaming, nerves firing signals that felt like lightning and prayer. Marcus lifted, supporting most of her weight, but Evelyn felt her leg working, felt it bearing load, felt it remembering what standing meant. Then she was vertical. Shaking, supported, barely holding on, but vertical. Her legs were under her. Her spine was straight. She was standing for the first time since the fall, and the world looked different from this height, bigger, brighter, full of possibilities she'd forgotten existed. "Oh, my stars," Lily breathed from her mat. "Ms. Shaw, you're so tall." The observation was so purely childlike that Evelyn laughed, a shocked, breathless sound that might have been crying, except it felt like joy. She was tall. She was standing. Her body was holding her up with Marcus's help, yes, but holding nonetheless. "How does it feel?" Marcus asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Like I'm flying and falling at the same time." Evelyn's voice shook. "Like I might break apart or put myself back together. I don't know which." "Both," Marcus said. "It's always both." They held the position for 30 seconds, an eternity and an instant, before Evelyn's legs started to give out, and Marcus helped her back down to kneeling, then sitting, her body collapsing against the parallel bars while tears streamed down her face. "I stood," she whispered. "I actually stood." "You did." Marcus was smiling, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "That was incredible, Evelyn. That was Mom's face," Lily interrupted, moving closer. "Dad, she had Mom's face, the one in the video when she stood up the first time." Marcus nodded, understanding something Evelyn didn't have context for. "Yeah, Lilyflower, exactly that face." They tried twice more that session, each attempt lasting a few seconds longer, Evelyn's legs growing stronger with practice and memory. By the end of the hour, she could bear her own weight for almost a minute with Marcus's hands barely touching her waist. Support, not control, witnessing instead of carrying. When they finished, Evelyn was exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical effort. She felt wrung out, reborn, terrified, and triumphant all at once. Marcus helped her back into the wheelchair, and Lily presented her with a drawing she'd made during the session. A stick figure standing between two lines that must have been the parallel bars, arms raised in victory, a huge smile on the circular face. "That's you," Lily explained. "Being brave. Can I sign it?" "Please." Evelyn's throat was tight. Lily signed carefully in purple crayon. "To Ms. Shaw, who is learning to fly. Love, Lily Reed." That night, Evelyn framed the drawing and hung it in her bedroom where she'd see it first thing every morning. Proof that a 7-year-old understood something most adults missed. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was showing up anyway, even when your body was remembering how to be whole, one terrifying inch at a time. The standing work continued 3 times a week for the next month. Each session pushed Evelyn further, from 30 seconds to 2 minutes to 5. From complete dependence on Marcus's support to bearing most of her own weight. From parallel bars to a walker to finally the moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after that first standing attempt. Evelyn had been working with the walker for a week, taking tiny shuffling steps between the bars while Marcus spotted her. Progress was measurable but slow, each step a negotiation between her brain and her body. "I want to try without the walker," Evelyn said suddenly. Marcus looked up from where he was adjusting the safety mats. "That's ambitious. We should probably—" "I want to try." Her voice was firm. "Just a few steps. You can stay close, but I need to know if I can do it without equipment between me and the ground." Marcus studied her for a long moment, reading something in her expression. Then he nodded. "Okay, but we start at the bars. You hold on until you're steady, then release when you're ready. I'll be right beside you." Evelyn positioned herself at the parallel bars, pulled herself to standing, easier now, her legs strong enough to bear her weight without shaking, and took a breath. This was it. The moment she'd been working towards since Marcus walked into that VIP room and said the impossible thing. "I want to help you walk again." She released the bars. For a heartbeat, she wobbled, her balance uncertain without support. Then her body found its center, remembered its architecture, and she was standing independently for the first time in 18 months. "Good," Marcus said quietly. "Now shift your weight to your left leg. Feel how that grounds you." Evelyn shifted. Her left leg held firm, strong enough to carry her. She lifted her right foot, just an inch off the ground, and moved it forward. 1 step. Then she shifted her weight again and moved her left foot. Another step. She was walking, slowly, shakily, but walking. Her body was obeying her will, translating intention into motion, proving that 18 months of paralysis hadn't been permanent, just protective. "Keep going," Marcus encouraged, matching her pace. "You're doing great." Evelyn took another step, and another. She made it 5 feet before her legs started to give out, and Marcus was there immediately, steadying her, helping her back to the wheelchair. "I walked," she gasped. "Marcus, I actually—" "You walked." His smile was brilliant. 5 whole steps on your own. That was extraordinary. The news spread fast despite Evelyn's attempts at privacy. Someone at the community center, well-meaning but thoughtless, posted about the local billionaire learning to walk again. Within hours, it was trending. Within a day, the same gossip blogs that had called her a fraud were calling her inspirational. The shift in narrative should have felt validating. Instead, it felt suffocating. Evelyn was no longer just a woman working on her recovery. She was a symbol, a story, a teaching moment about perseverance and triumph over adversity. The pressure that had eased during her rest period came roaring back, doubled. Her assistant fielded interview requests from morning shows, disability advocacy groups, TED Talk organizers. Everyone wanted her story. Everyone wanted to package her struggle into digestible inspiration for audiences who'd forgotten her name before the commercial break. "Decline them all," Evelyn told her assistant. "Every single one." "But Ms. Shaw, this is good publicity. After the earlier articles calling you a fraud, this could—" "I don't care about publicity." Evelyn's voice was sharp. "I'm not walking for anyone's inspiration. I'm walking because my body is ready to walk again. That's the only story that matters." She meant it, but the pressure built anyway, seeping in through cracks she couldn't quite seal. The knowledge that people were watching, waiting to see if she'd complete her redemption arc or fail spectacularly, made every session feel like performance. It came to a head 2 weeks later at a session that should have been routine. Evelyn was working on walking longer distances, building endurance, when Marcus stopped her mid-stride. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Walking, like we practiced." "No, you're performing walking. There's a difference." Marcus moved to stand in front of her, blocking her path. "You're so focused on looking steady, on proving you can do this, that you're not actually present in your body. You're back in your head, measuring yourself against an invisible audience." The accuracy of it stung. "I'm trying to get better. You're trying to be perfect." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "Evelyn, you don't need to earn the right to exist in your body. You don't need to walk perfectly to deserve mobility. You just need to show up and let your body remember at its own pace." "Everyone's watching now," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. "All those people who called me a fraud, they're waiting to see if I prove them wrong or right. I can't just exist. I have to perform." "No." Marcus took her hand, steady and sure. "You have to choose, right now. Are you walking for them or for you?" The question hung in the air between them, demanding honesty Evelyn wasn't sure she could provide. She thought about the past 2 months, the breathing work, the pool sessions, the parallel bars, the walker. Every step had been hers when she stopped performing and started simply being present. "I don't know how to separate those things anymore," she whispered. "Then maybe it's time to stop trying." Marcus released her hands. "I'm going to tell you what I told Sarah when she got stuck in the same place. You can keep walking for the audience, keep measuring your worth by their approval, and spend the rest of your life performing recovery. Or you can walk for yourself, at your own pace, with no one watching but you and the people who actually matter." And which did Sarah choose? She chose herself. Told the nurses to stop filming her progress. Told the therapist to stop talking about her like she was inspirational. Told me to stop trying to fix her and just be present while she fixed herself. Marcus's expression softened. It was the hardest and bravest thing she ever did. And it worked. Evelyn looked down at her feet, still thin, still weak, but hers again in ways that mattered. She thought about Lily's drawing, about Caroline's validation, about the moment she'd stood for the first time and felt like she was flying and falling simultaneously. "I choose myself," she said quietly. "I walk for me." "Good," Marcus smiled. "Then let's walk. No performance, no audience. Just you and your body having a conversation." They walked. Evelyn stopped trying to look steady and just focused on feeling steady. Stopped measuring her gait against some imaginary standard and just let her body move at its own uncertain pace. It was messier than performing, more honest, more real. And it felt like freedom. The gala was Evelyn's idea. though she couldn't quite remember when the idea had solidified into plan. 3 months after that first standing attempt, 4 months after Marcus had walked into her VIP room and changed everything, she was ready to do something she'd never done before. Be publicly, honestly, vulnerable in front of the people who'd built empires alongside her. The event was ostensibly a fundraiser for a new nonprofit Evelyn had been quietly developing with Marcus, the Hope Center, a facility offering accessible therapy to families dealing with paralysis regardless of their ability to pay. But really, it was Evelyn's chance to step out of the wheelchair and into the story she'd been too afraid to claim. The night arrived cold and clear, the kind of December evening that made New York feel like a snow globe. Evelyn had her team set up the gala at a hotel with full accessibility, ramps, elevators, space for wheelchairs to navigate without asking permission. The guest list included board members, investors, and press, but also Mrs. Chen, Lily, and a handful of people Marcus had helped over the years. People who understood that recovery wasn't linear and inspiration was complicated. Evelyn arrived in her wheelchair, custom midnight blue carbon fiber, polished to perfection, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent and feeling more terrified than she'd been standing at the parallel bars for the first time. Robert wheeled her to the green room where Marcus waited with Lily. The 7-year-old wore a velvet dress and an expression of solemn importance. "You look beautiful, Ms. Shaw," Lily said. "Are you really going to walk in front of everyone?" "That's the plan." Evelyn's voice was steadier than she felt. "Are you ready to see it?" "I'm ready to see you be brave." Lily's answer was simple, clear. "Dad says brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the thing even when you are." Marcus met Evelyn's eyes over his daughter's head. "You don't have to do this. No one's expecting—" "I'm not doing it for their expectations." Evelyn straightened in her wheelchair. "I'm doing it because I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting fear dictate my story. If I'm going to walk, I want to walk towards something that matters." The ballroom was full when Evelyn rolled in. Hundreds of people in evening wear, champagne flowing, the hum of conversation that came with successful people performing success. They quieted when they saw her, that familiar hush of uncertainty about how to react to disability in formal settings. Evelyn rolled to the front of the room where a podium waited, accessible and visible. She'd prepared remarks, typed them out, rehearsed them. But looking at the faces staring back, some genuinely supportive, some curious, some waiting for spectacle, she abandoned the script. 18 months ago, I jumped off a third-story balcony, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. Not because I wanted to die, but because I wanted to escape. I'd spent a decade being treated like furniture by a man who convinced me my only value was decorative. The jump was supposed to be freedom. Instead, it became a different kind of cage. The room was absolutely silent now. Evelyn could see shock on faces that had only known her as the composed tech billionaire who'd handled her disability with grace and dignity. I spent 18 months in this wheelchair telling everyone it was acceptance, that I was adjusting, adapting, showing the world how to handle adversity with elegance. She gripped the armrests, her hands steady. I was lying. To you, to myself, to everyone. I wasn't accepting anything. I was hiding. I was so terrified of hoping and failing that I chose paralysis over the risk of trying. Someone in the back coughed. The sound echoed in the silence. Then a janitor walked into my private dining room and said something impossible. "I want to help you walk again." Evelyn found Marcus in the crowd, standing with Lily, both of them watching with expressions that said, "Keep going. We're here." Marcus Reed had no credentials, no medical degree, no reason to think he could help beyond the fact that he'd helped his wife recover from paralysis before cancer took her. But he saw something my doctors missed. My body wasn't broken. It was protecting me. Evelyn released the wheelchair's brake, rolled forward slightly. For the past 4 months, Marcus has helped me remember that my body is mine. That movement isn't something I have to earn or prove or perform. It's just existence, just the natural state of a body that's ready to remember how to be whole. She positioned the wheelchair at the edge of the small stage, where Marcus had quietly placed a walker earlier in the evening. The plan had been for her to transfer here, to stand with support, to take a few symbolic steps before returning to the safety of the chair.
But looking at the faces staring back, some of them genuinely moved, others still performing appropriate reaction, Evelyn made a different choice. I'm going to walk to that podium now, she said, not to inspire you, not to prove anything to anyone who called me a fraud or a spectacle. I'm going to walk because my body wants to, and because I'm done letting fear of failure, of judgment, of vulnerability keep me from existing in the fullness of who I am. She stood from the wheelchair. The ballroom collectively held its breath. Evelyn felt her legs take her weight, stronger now, steady from months of work. She left the walker where it sat and stepped forward into empty space. One step. Her left leg, strong and sure. 2 steps. Her right leg, weaker but present. 3 steps. 4. 5. The podium was 10 feet away. 10 feet that might as well have been miles, her legs trembling, her balance uncertain, every eye in the room tracking her progress like she was a tightrope walker without a net. 6 steps. 7. 8. Her right leg wobbled. For a moment, Evelyn thought she'd fall, thought she'd prove every cruel comment right, thought this whole exercise was hubris disguised as courage. Then she found her center, shifted her weight, kept going. 9 steps. 10. Her hands gripped the podium, and the ballroom erupted. Applause crashed over her like a wave, people standing, some crying, the noise overwhelming and validating and completely beside the point. Because Evelyn wasn't walking for their approval. She was walking because her body had remembered how, and that was enough. She looked out at the crowd, found Marcus and Lily. The 7-year-old was jumping up and down, her face split with joy. Marcus was smiling that quiet smile, the one that said, "I knew you could do this. I never doubted." "I'm not inspirational," Evelyn said into the microphone, her voice cutting through the applause. "I'm just a woman who got scared, got hurt, got help, and decided trying was worth the risk of failing. But I want to use this moment, this attention you're giving me, to talk about the people who don't get help, who don't have access to therapy, to pools, to someone like Marcus who shows up and refuses to let them disappear into safety." The applause quieted. People settled back into their seats, listening. The Hope Center will provide exactly what I received: presence, patience, and the space to heal without performance. We'll serve families regardless of ability to pay. We'll honor that recovery isn't linear and inspiration is complicated. Evelyn's hands gripped the podium harder. And we'll remember that the bravest thing anyone can do is show up for themselves, especially when everyone's watching and hoping for either triumph or tragedy. She outlined the center's mission, its funding model, the partnerships already in place. By the time she finished, pledges were flooding in, millions of dollars from people who could afford to care, who wanted to be part of something that mattered. The event continued another hour. Evelyn returned to her wheelchair, not because she had to, but because walking was still exhausting and she'd learned that rest wasn't weakness. She accepted congratulations, fielded questions about her recovery, and watched Lily dance with her father while the band played something soft and sweet. As the crowd thinned, Marcus approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "You did it." "We did it." Evelyn accepted the glass. "I couldn't have walked 10 feet 6 months ago. Couldn't have imagined wanting to." The wanting was always there. Marcus sat on the edge of the stage, casual and comfortable. "You just needed permission to try." "Thank you for giving me that." Evelyn's voice was quiet. "For seeing what I couldn't, for refusing to let me hide. Thank you for showing up." Marcus met her eyes, something shifting in his expression. "For being brave enough to try even when you were terrified." They sat in comfortable silence while the event staff cleaned up around them and Lily dozed in a chair nearby, exhausted from dancing. Then Evelyn said something she'd been thinking about for weeks but hadn't found the courage to voice. "I'm tired of walking alone." Marcus looked at her, understanding dawning. "Evelyn, I know this is complicated. I know I'm still figuring out who I am outside of performance mode. I know you have Lily to think about and a life that doesn't need my chaos." The words came faster now, urgent. "But Marcus, you've seen me at my worst and my weakest, and you didn't flinch. You held space while I fell apart and put myself back together. That's not therapy, that's love." Marcus said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "That's love, Evelyn, and I've been falling into it for months while trying to maintain professional boundaries that stopped making sense around week 3. Evelyn's breath caught.
I don't want professional boundaries anymore. Good. Neither do I. Marcus moved closer, his hand finding hers. But I need you to understand something. I'm not Richard. I'm not going to erase you or make you furniture or treat you like decoration. I'm a janitor with a 7-year-old daughter and a 1-bedroom apartment that's nowhere near fancy enough for someone like you. Someone like me is still learning how to exist without performing. Evelyn squeezed his hand. Someone like me needs a partner who understands that recovery isn't linear, and some days I'll be strong, and some days I'll need help, and both are okay. I can do that. Marcus smiled. As long as you understand that my daughter comes first, my late wife's memory matters, and I make terrible decisions about when to help people who probably don't need my help. Like stubborn billionaires in wheelchairs? Exactly like that. They kissed then, soft and certain, surrounded by empty champagne glasses and the architecture of an event designed to announce Evelyn's return to the world. But the kiss wasn't about performance or announcement. It was just two people who'd witnessed each other's worst and chosen to stay anyway, who understood that love, real love, was showing up even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. 6 months later, the Hope Center opened its doors in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn with Lily Reed's mural glowing on the main wall, crayon flowers and stick figures and the words, "Everyone deserves to remember how to fly," written in purple. The opening ceremony was smaller than the gala, more intimate. Families who'd already enrolled in the program, staff who believed in the mission, and a handful of people who understood that healing wasn't linear and inspiration was complicated. Evelyn walked through the facility without her wheelchair. She kept it still, used it on hard days, refused to treat it like failure, with Marcus beside her and Lily darting ahead to show off her artwork. "This is what matters," Evelyn said, watching a mother work with her daughter in the accessible pool while therapists offered quiet encouragement. "Not the walking. This." "The walking matters too." Marcus slipped his arm around her waist, steady and sure. Both things can be true. They were. Evelyn had learned that lesson over and over in the months since the gala. Both things could be true. She could be strong and need help. She could be healed and still healing. She could walk and still remember what the wheelchair taught her about resilience. That evening, after the ceremony ended and the families went home, and Lily fell asleep in the car, on the way back to the apartment they now shared, Evelyn and Marcus stood on a terrace overlooking the city. No cameras, no audience. Just wind and light and the quiet certainty of two people who'd found each other in the architecture of healing. "Dance with me," Marcus said. "I'm not very good at it yet. My balance—" "I know, dance with me anyway." They swayed together, slow and careful, Marcus's hands supporting without controlling while Evelyn's body remembered what it felt like to move without fear. The city stretched below them, millions of people building lives in the spaces between trying and failing and trying again. "I love you," Evelyn said into the quiet. "Not because you helped me walk, because you helped me remember that I was worth showing up for." "I love you too." Marcus's voice was soft against her hair. "Not because you're walking, because you chose to try even when everyone was watching and hoping you'd fail." They kept dancing, surrounded by nothing but possibility and the dangerous necessary certainty that healing, real healing, wasn't about the destination. It was about showing up, about presence, about the choice to keep trying even when the outcome wasn't guaranteed, about learning that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to exist fully, vulnerably, honestly, even when everyone was watching, especially then. And as they moved together in the darkness, two people who'd learned that impossible things happened when you showed up, Evelyn felt something she hadn't allowed herself since before the balcony, before the wheelchair, before everything that taught her to hide. She felt home, not in a place, not in a body that finally obeyed, but in the steady certainty that she was enough, broken and healed, trying and resting, walking and sometimes falling. Enough, always enough, especially now. The city lights blazed below, indifferent and beautiful, while above them stars fought through light pollution to remind everyone looking up that some things were worth the struggle to see clearly. Evelyn and Marcus kept dancing, and somewhere in the spaces between breath and movement, and the quiet music of two hearts learning to beat in sync, healing became less about the destination and more about the choice to keep showing up. Together. Honest. Home.